Commission meeting today, Tuesday, July 12, 2016. We have the Reverend Chad Perry with us from the River Community Church, and thank you, sir.
Let's pray together and just take a moment of silence for the fallen officers and all that's been going on around our country and the world. Father God, we love you, and we thank you for your love for us, Lord. And our hearts have been moved and stirred by the events that have surrounded us, some on the other side of the globe, but some just too close to home. And Father, we do pray for all of the first responders, the ones who often find themselves in harm's way. We pray for them. We pray for the families of the ones who have fallen. We pray for the ones that continue to serve in very interesting and diverse and severe circumstances. Father, give them the wisdom that they need and the courage that they need to continue to protect and serve and take care of the people of our great nation, our cities, our counties. Father, keep them safe. And Father, grant us the wisdom that we need to continue to govern, and not to govern out of some reaction, but out of our heart, our true relationship with you, out of the need for unity and love, and instead of being divisive or any of those other things that are just not of you. So Lord, give us the courage to lead in such a way that would be in agreement with your word, in agreement with your spirit. Father, that love would abound and begin to heal the hearts of men. In your word, it often begins with something called repentance, with something where we take responsibility for the actions that maybe we've done that weren't so good. And so, Lord, move upon our hearts that we would take responsibility, that we would literally stand up for the things that maybe we did wrong and say, hey, we messed up. Let's start over. Father, unify our country, unify our county, Lord, in each city, municipality, that we would want to honor you and serve you, that you would have your way in the hearts and lives of your people, and it would be a better place. Thank you, Lord, for the blessing of living here. Thank you for the blessing, Lord, that is Putnam County. Have your way. Work in us and through us for your glory and honor, in the precious name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rev. Commissioner Harris will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good morning to everyone again. Good morning. Commissioners, 2 on the agenda is the minutes from our previous meeting on June 28th. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Yeah, motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, it carries. All right, number 3, any blue cards this morning, Tony? Public comment cards? Don't see anybody wishing for to speak at public comment. Now's your time. Please come up. Good morning, Mr. Spells.
Good morning.
John Spells, 106 Citrus Lane. I'm kind of cool off this morning after that meeting I went to the other day. But, you know, I kind of feel like the commissioner has been lying to the citizens about the Dog Branch Canal. We done heard the excuse that water management wouldn't let you clean it out. Then, Miss Nancy, you told Mr. K. Moore that because of him, you couldn't get no more money to clean it out. But now that you got the money, y'all done went and found someone to say that it wasn't worth cleaning out. But I also overheard when Mr. Palacia mentioned about cleaning a ditch through a cow pasture, he just about got an outstanding ovation on that. And you know, for the longest, me and Mr. Camo been coming here trying to get that ditch clean, that, you know, it's kind of sad that we rode the back seat on the bus, but now you done took and hook a trailer to it and put us on the very back end of that there. Mr. Flagg, you said yourself that you were gonna do something about getting that ditch cleaned out when you met with me and Mr. Camo there. But, you know, it seemed like everybody keep kicking the can every time I would ask. Recently, I asked what was the outgoing on it. The guy was saying that they was trying to get the citizens to sign to actually be able to have permission to clean the ditch. But when I go to the meeting the other day, somebody done pulled the rabbit out of their hat and said that the ditch wasn't worth cleaning out. But if that's the case, why would you go over there and clean the ditches in the field and really don't give a darn about the citizen where the water's ending up? And you know, the thing that really bothers me, if you're not gonna clean the ditch, what happened to the money that was sent for cleaning the ditch?
The only money we received, Mr. Spells, was for the study, the engineering of cleaning the ditch if possible. It's found to be in the 100-year floodplain, therefore it's low, and you can't do anything with it if it's in the 100-year floodplain. Other than that, we have a report from Ayers and Associates I'd be glad to give you, and you sound like you've concluded on what you feel, but you can read their professional opinion if you like.
Well, the thing of it is, anybody can write what they want to write, but it don't make it right. But my point of it is, if that had any justification, why would you clean the ditches in the fields? In other words, if you're going to clean it at one end, clean it all the way through. Because the average time when that water comes through there, it takes it about 3 days to actually go down. So there's no justification of saying it's unnecessary to actually clean the ditch, because if you're going to do it at one point, do it all the way through. Don't just do it at one point to where everybody else flood out and then you really don't give a darn. Because I've seen that water just about come up to the concrete wall along the road, so you can't tell me if cleaning that ditch ain't gonna do anything.
Commissioner Flagg.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is on the next transportation agenda to be, so that the engineer is speaking, Public Works is speaking, the legislators are speaking, and of course, you and all of those who are directly associated with Dog Branch. So it's not a matter of us taking someone's word. We're gonna get the report actually presented to us by the engineers who did the, conducted the study, and that's the meeting that you should attend with us, so that we're all getting the information, and then we will know what the next step is going to be. But we have not concluded finally what is going to happen until that report comes, and your input, and Reverend Camo, who's walking in the room now, input will certainly be just as welcomed as it is right now. But so that next meeting is the meeting that we need to keep you abreast of.
Okay, well, it ain't like we're asking for so much, but the point of it is if you're gonna start something, follow it to the end. Just don't get to a certain point and stop.
We're not stopping. That's why the engineers are coming.
Coming.
Yeah.
Mr. Spells, that was your 3 minutes. If you
Okay.
could, please come to that meeting, though. I would like to hear more of your comment there. Anybody else wishing to speak? Good morning, Reverend K. Moore.
Leroy Camo, 117 Gladys Avenue, East Palatka, Florida. My question is, Mr. Chip, on last week at that meeting, what I can understand about it is many times as I've been out to St. John River Water Management, everybody out there tell me that y'all can clean that canal over there, Dog Branch. But now, last week in that meeting, y'all say y'all can't touch it. So maybe what I would like to know is, was it St. John River told y'all couldn't clean it?
We have, if you can give Mr. K. Moore the dates of that meeting, we commissioned a very expensive study to find out what we can and cannot do, and we're going to hear those results Our next transportation meeting is the last Tuesday of this month, sir.
26.
2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been to them before, but if you'd please come to that meeting,
I was
we can
at
shed
one.
some light on this. And
July 26th.
And it's, 2 o'clock. I think there's anything that we can comment on that's new, only the old stuff. Let's see what these engineers have to say about it.
Well, why can't look like all of us, the St. John River
They will be here.
County
They're
Commissioners,
going to be there, Reverend K. Moore.
because y'all have gotten the money for it, to do it. 5.5, well, this will be 6 years this summer, been coming down here about that canal. And the thing that is so disheartening, in repeating myself, y'all clean out all of those canals coming through Cracker Swamp. You know the story. You clean them out till you get right up to 207, and then you stop. Soon as the rainy season come, we gets flooded out. And you say you can't open that stretch onto the river, but years past and gone, they kept the canal open where the water would go. And that looks like we in that area are expendable. Nobody care nothing about us in that area. And it ain't only the black people. You got white people living down that canal too. But I guess the problem is, look like none of them come to the meetings. And that's where it need every taxpayer out there to meet y'all here at the meeting, and maybe we can get something done.
Okay, 2 o'clock, end of the month. Reverend Flagg, you have?
Yes, we will have everybody that is directly related to the engineering study in that meeting, and we do care. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Blue card, Mr. Tim Hotelling.
Good morning.
Normally I just get up here and run off, but I actually wrote some stuff down, so you're gonna have to bear with me. And it's in regards to the Chamber of Commerce, and a basic question, do y'all, from a taxpayer's perspective, I'm concerned whether you get anything in return for your $250,000 that you pay each year. And as I said at the workshop on the 22nd, Putnam County Chamber of Commerce's representative presented the results of study of a draft report the State Department of Economic Opportunity funded report called Community Assessment and Economic Development Strategic Plan. It had a lot of list of things that y'all needed to do, that they all needed to do. You've all read it. It's there. That list was extensive. The number of items that needed to be done surprised me. A lot of them seemed simple, routine, mundane, that should have been done, which comes back to the question of is there an ability of the council to ask why wasn't it done? I'm sorry if I'm putting anybody to sleep, but we'll go right ahead. The tasks that weren't done were like develop a formal business incentives policy to bring people in, explore the development of a medical corridor, develop a comprehensive list of tourism assets and begin to identify and plan for infrastructure investments to improve their competitiveness. Seems to me that people are out there trying to bring people in. Paid professionals would have a lot of these things done. The list was extensive. Back to my question. The most astounding thing I heard was a representative of the chamber who told you all they keep absolutely no records as to how many businesses open each year and how many businesses fail. They keep no records or choose not to reveal to you who pay them the majority of their salaries, 2/3 of their dadgum budget, and they can't come and tell you how many telephone calls they get each month. They can't come and tell you how many contacts that they had, how many serious interests were, and more importantly for you guys, they can't tell you what were the fatal flaws for people looking to come to this county. And I know Mr. Pellicier's had a lot of experience in folk getting away, and it all comes down to what you think's infrastructure. But if you got big businesses that don't want to come, focus on the little businesses. Y'all deserve some statistics and some information for $250,000.
Mr. Hoteling, if
Yes,
you'll
sir.
get with me after this meeting, I will provide you with at least half, if not more, of what you just described.
I'd like that, because
No
y'all,
problem.
I mean, we were there, public meeting, and they said they didn't keep
I don't
the
agree
staff.
with you. I'm saying it publicly, and I'll show you why.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Well, my question would be, have you made an appointment to speak with the board of directors or the executive director at the chamber so that they could share? It's not private. The encounters become private because most businesses that are on a search to come to any area, they don't want it disclosed because of competition.
I understand that excuse.
But that's
I understand some of the legitimacy of
It's
that
not an
excuse.
excuse, it's a practice.
I understand some of the legitimacy
Okay,
of that.
I didn't make my
Okay.
statement to engage into debate. I'm simply saying, we're not the chamber. We do get the reports. We get quarterly reports, there from the chamber, and everything can be strengthened. What we do can be better, what they do can be better, but
Well,
I think that the forum, especially if you were going to raise the issue of the chamber, it would have been nice if you could have said to them, I'm going to raise I'm going to talk about you in the public meeting, and they could have been here. That's all I'm
I
saying.
did when he was there, and I'm just responding to what he told you. And if he told you then something that is in error, he should be here to tell you now.
I think it's the interpretation of what he told us. Thank you.
No, Carl.
Okay, anybody else for public comment? Now's your time. All right, seeing none, we're going to move to the wait. Yeah, the consent agenda. Or you want to, Mr. Smith, you want to go at this point? All right. We're going to turn to our clerk. He has a meeting in St. Johns County and needs to share some information with us earlier. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to take just a minute and tell you about a program that the Putnam County Clerk of Court's office has launched. We actually launched it in May of this year. We did a soft launch so we could have a few people look at it, go online, look at the registration for this. But this is a program called TriShield, and actually, Mr. Hoteling and I had a conversation about this about 6 months ago. He sent me an article from a paper in New York where a woman had had her property stolen out from under her by fraudulent recording of documents in the official records. And we had already been aware of this as the clerks around the state and as the recorder for the county, and our responsibility to protect public documents in the official records of what could we do to try to make this better. So I worked with a software company to develop this program for Putnam County. And what it is an individual can go online through our website. It's an easy process. You register your name that you want us to monitor. So if you use your full name for documents, you would register that name, or if you use a name like I do sometimes, it's just Tim Smith. And however you generally have your documents registered, you then register that with us, and then what we do is we monitor that name electronically. So if any document gets recorded in the official records that matches that name, we send you a notification that day and just simply say that a document was recorded that matched the name that you registered for with us to monitor. And then you can go online to our system and you can actually view the document. It could be a legitimate document, but it could also be a fraudulent document where someone is trying to scam you out of your possessions. And in the case that Mr. Hoteling talked to me about, it was a lady that had a property that had gone through foreclosure and was not monitored on a daily basis with someone living there. And these folks recorded a fraudulent deed in their name, then turned around and listed the property and sold it. And now, the reality is you can undo those things if something fraudulently has happened, but it's kind of like when someone steals your identity. It takes you years to recover from it. And so this system that we've installed and have now up and running lets us monitor your name for you. And the good part of it is it doesn't cost you anything. And so if you go to our website, look down at the about halfway down, there's a box that says fraud alert, Tri-Shield, click here to register. It's a 2 or 3 step process, and then we do the work behind the scenes and we monitor that name, and it really is a great service for the citizens of Putnam County, and also helps us to protect those records that are so important to our society and our county. And so we're excited to announce that. And I handed out brochures to most people, but I'm going to put some over here on the corner, so if anyone didn't get one, take a look at it and take advantage of this service that we're offering. And thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Tim, where else might they find those pamphlets around the community?
Well, they're online right now, and we're just now starting to get these out. We've gone through our beta testing of the site to make sure that it's easy to use, and it is. And so over the summer, I'm going to be out to civic clubs and homeowners groups and talking about this program that's available and get the word out.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right.
Wonderful.
Okay. Commissioners, next consent agenda. Anything wishing to pull?
I have nothing.
I have nothing, sir.
I have none.
Commissioner Harris?
So move that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion on the floor?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, like sign, it carries. Thank you, Commissioners. Let's take just a moment to get caught up here with our papers. 25. Mr. Sammons, you're next.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
First case is 2010-00626, 115 Easy Street, Rosemary and Frederick Ralston. This is a fine reduction request. The type of violation was an unsafe mobile home. The property was abated by the county after 4 years of going through the process. I won't read all this stuff in here, but basically the Ralstons bought this property from a person who had bought the tax deed sale. Those people didn't disclose the fact that there were fines and liens. At the special magistrate meeting, we had a discussion concerning this, and staff had recommended that the fine be reduced from $28,550 for the daily fine and $1,450 for the abatement cost, to a total of $2,500 if it's paid with 180 days of Board of County Commissioner action. The special magistrate concurred with that recommendation. Any
Is
questions?
Mr. or Mrs. Ralston with us today?
I don't think so.
Okay. But they were present at the special magistrate?
No, they were not.
They were not. Okay. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Sammons, our total cost here was $3,589, and we're taking another $1,000 hit on this. Is that $3,589 due to all the new owner fines, or is that just the total cost that we've got into it?
The people that own it now have never been involved with the case when it was in violation. Yes, the county does have, which the number that you mentioned, excuse me, we felt that the person who bought the property from the tax deed should have disclosed the thing, but a lot of people don't do that, even though they're supposed to. These people were like deer in the headlights. They just signed whatever, was ever put in front of them. So we decided at the special magistrate meeting that we would try to defray at least some of the extra costs that they got stuck with.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sammons and Mr. Smith, this has occurred many, many times over a lot of years now. Is there any way we could fix this at the site of the sale, at the tax deed sale?
Well, the tax collector, I don't want to speak for Tim, but they do a title search so that whoever's buying it on tax deed sale knows the information that's there, and for the most part, those people, when they buy it on tax deed, are buying it to do something with it. We have several corporations now that don't do that. They buy them and then they flip them without doing anything, and those are the ones that are causing the issues. And I don't know of a way to fix that. If people don't read the stuff they sign.
You've shared this with us before, but that's still occurring?
Yes.
These big buys from the
Yes.
LLCs
Yes.
operating?
Yeah, but the reality is that even through a tax deed sale, government liens are not wiped off of a piece of property through a tax deed process. Those remain with the property. So it could be an IRS lien, it could be a code enforcement lien, it could be others, and those stay with the property. But it's still the responsibility of the buyer to do their research. And there is a title search that's done, and a list that is produced that the title company finds, and it's the responsibility of the buyer to know what they're buying. And at the tax deed sale, the statement that we read at the beginning of the sale is to remind them it's your responsibility to see if there are any other taxes due. And so, you know, you can only do so much, and it's still the responsibility of the buyer to do that.
Mr.
My
Chair.
concern, I guess, is, Commissioner Harris, you
I
know
was
a
just
lot
going to
about this.
say, you should never buy a piece of property without title insurance. It should be just a regular rule. You need to check out what you're getting. And if people would just do that, they would be protected because it's on the public record. And that's how we get protected.
Commissioner Flagg.
Yeah, if we continue to have what I call just individuals, and I mean corporations that are repeat offenders, let's give them some free publicity so that wherever their headquarters is and community, let's let them know that, you know, this is what you do, this is the kind of corporation that you run, and I think that the exposure might get some voluntary compliance. We do know ultimately that the person who's the purchaser, just as was stated, you know, it's really on them. But I think that when we have individuals that are coming, that are making the improvements to the property, we certainly want that to happen as well. And I think that's where your leniency is coming in, and how we're trying to cooperate with the person so they don't feel victimized twice. But these people are victimizers, and they need to be exposed. And I think if you have a list, we have a competent attorney that can certainly give them some free publicity.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith. He's right on what I'm thinking.
Well, but I also want to make sure that we understand that this is a relatively small number of tax deeds that get into this particular spot, that we move generally a couple of thousand a year that have no trouble at all, that people do their research, that the title search is done correctly, people know what they're buying, and they get resolved. So we shouldn't think that this is as a percentage, a huge issue. A few of those end up in this case, but the vast majority move through the process just like they're supposed to when these properties get back on the tax roll.
Well, let's be honest, the corporate buyers will bunch them up and flip them, as John says, throughout the year, and whatever's left over, they walk away, leaving them to go through the process again with more liens stacked on them, and that's what I'm trying to address here. I know it's a small percentage, but it really is a problem. I'm not sure what to do with it, but, all right. If you ever, yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation on case 2010-00626.
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion? I have a little. If you ever see a window of light that we can inject something, maybe we lead the state in some procedure that could deal with this issue, because we can't be the only ones that occur that. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Sammons.
The next case is 2015-0044-106 Fran Lane, Mike and Lori Gorski. This is a care premises issue, type of violation, took 1 year and 4 months to come into compliance. The Gorskis owned it the whole time. Staff has recommended that the $3,150 fine be reduced to $710 if it's paid within 90 days of Board of County Commissioner action. The $710 is based upon our formula that we do, the cost of doing business. Mr. Gorski, I believe, is here and would like to, he missed the
Mr. Gorski, come on up, sir.
special magistrate meeting because I wasn't aware that I was supposed to talk to him by email, but he and I talked yesterday, and he would like to present his case today.
Okay. Mr. Gorski, if you would, state your name and address. for the
Michael C.
record.
Gorski, 106 Fran Lane, Satsuma.
Thank you, sir. Floor is yours.
Yes, when I was found compliant in front of the special magistrate, I was advised by Patrick of Codes Enforcement that if I went along with things and just let the magistrate and go with what building and zoning said, that they would, just give me a fine reduction. All I had to do was ask, and that's all I said at the special magistrate. They told me afterwards to come back to the office, at which time we made the arrangement that that I was to get an email after they came up with costs, and likewise. I was also, from Patrick, told that the substantial reduction is generally about 10% or less of what your fine is. And that Brenda Gallows also went ahead and told me at the same time. We were supposed to have the meeting, but I never got an email for that or for the other special magistrate meeting. And they knew that I was going to be out of town. I work out of town. The only way to correspond with me is through my email because there was no way for me to get a certified letter or regular mail. They also had my phone number. So I was not informed of any of this until I got a letter saying that it's $710. I would just like them to keep their word and make it 10% or less of the fine. That's pretty cut and dry.
Let's see what Mr. Salmon says.
That's
Is that a
the-
practice, 10%?
No, we have for at least 2 or 3 years now, based upon discussions with you, the board, to figure out our cost and cover the cost. And then that's,
Mr. Gorski, does this
This is all part of-
predate in the last few years, as he just stated?
No, this is all current. And this is just part of the misinformation that the people at Building and Zoning give the normal public, the taxpaying citizens. I mean, I was originally told before the meter even started running about being non-compliant and all that, that if I donated 2 of the vehicles, the problem is solved. I'll be compliant. Well, I donated 2 vehicles, the Ford XLT and a 23-foot Sea-Ray, but it didn't go away. And all I'm asking you guys to do is knock off, a few $100.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for it to be disclosed who said donate what and what will go away.
Yes, I can go ahead and,
If you would, please.
yes. I was running short on time from the special magistrate. I had a couple weeks, and I still hadn't been able to do anything with the vehicles. And so I called up, see if I could get an extension. What should I do? I asked them for advice. And the lady in the office, and it wasn't just a secretary, it was one of the people that, supposed to know what's going on.
A code officer?
Yes.
Okay.
Told me that they can't make me donate the boat, but it would solve the problem. If I donated
Okay,
the
well-
boat and the truck, then that would be resolved. I would be compliant.
Who was that person, sir?
I don't have a name for you, sir.
Okay.
Because I just called for information, like I would any other day when I didn't know, and I'm playing by your rules. And as things went along, I thought I was compliant, but obviously I wasn't. And as far as, if you have this thing that you say that you've got some special formula, then you need to tell Patrick, code enforcement, and you also need to tell Brenda Gallows not to say 10% or less, or it generally works out that way. Plain and simple. I mean, those are names, and that's straight from the horse's
Hold it
mouth.
for just a minute there, Mr. Gorski. You said you didn't remember their names, and now
No,
you just
this
popped
is,
two of them
this
on
is
us.
later on. This is the 10% part. The donation part, I don't remember her name.
Okay.
And that was right before Christmas and all that. That's when.
But these two individuals indicated that 10% was
They-
normally the fee. They were speaking in roundabout terms, or? were they
10% or less is 10% or less.
Okay,
They had to run them, they had to run some numbers, but 10% or less is 10% or less.
Commissioner Flagg.
Mr. Chairman, in the commentary, the analysis here, the grandfathered, the owners believed, and I'm reading from this, that they were grandfathered by Commissioners Eaton and Watts in the mid-90s. Are you talking staff back in the 90s, or are you talking present staff?
If you go, this is a totally different case. That case there went to bed back in '96, and that's another thing. They've brought up cases that are 20 years old. I have about a permit for a pool that was permitted. They just couldn't find the record until I had them go in archives, and they found the records for that. I mean, 20-year-old cases. I mean, I just
Okay.
want to get on with life. That's why I'm asking for a fine reduction.
Mr. Gorski, we've heard your request, and I'd like to hear the commissioners deliberate on this. Yes, Commissioner Harvey.
That was one of my questions I was fixing to ask. The type of violation, Mr. Sammons, is 1 year, 4 months, but Commissioner Eaton and Watts haven't been in office in a long time.
Well, as he just explained, that was two different cases.
Well, then why is it on our
Let's
sheet?
talk about the one right now.
Okay, but I need to know why it's on our sheet as the owner.
Okay, that's a legitimate question.
That was in the case summary of the case that it was put in there, that he evidently talked to one of the code enforcement officers and brought that up at some point.
But that's not pertinent to
That's not
this
really
case.
pertinent. no.
Hang on, Mr.
Thank
Gorski.
you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gorski.
I can tell you how that came to be and how that came up. To settle the pool issue, I had them go back in archives, and when they went back in archives, they pulled part of that up, and that's where they found that.
Okay.
In ancient archives that are on paper and no longer, they're not digitized or anything like that. They had to go search for it.
Okay, well, let me ask you this real quick. This is in compliance now, right, Mr. Sammons?
Correct.
Okay, and you would like 10% of that. I think that represents $350?
Yeah.
No, yeah,
$350.
$350. All right.
355, so, whatever.
Commissioners, what's your feelings? Trying to move it along here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to look into this and speak to, is Patrick the one that told you the 10%?
Yes, he did. He likened the case that you had, the case before, where this one here, he said this guy owed 50 grand in fines and fees, and he ended up paying 5 grand, 10%. Brenda Gallows, when we were discussing it right after the meeting with the magistrate, she said it generally runs 10% or less.
Well, for the record, it's usually the exact cost, which is a breakdown on the back sheet. And I don't doubt that this conversation might have taken place, and Commissioner Harris, to be fair, I think that we probably should have a discussion with staff about this exact cost, and no mention of 10% in the future.
Right. We don't do 10%. That is not the way we work. We work on what it actually cost us to have the case if we bring it down. So we might do something else, but never have we said it's a straight 10%.
Right, and I'd like to eliminate that as soon as possible.
Okay,
because
we
of
can
confusion.
straighten that out with the
But let's-
staff. But I would like to just postpone this decision until the next meeting, until we've had a chance to look into that. If our people did quote something wrong,
Are you
then I
agreeable
think
to
we
that,
need
Mr.
to
Gorski?
straighten it out.
That's fine with me, but, I mean, I just want
I
this
don't
to
think
go
we really
away.
need to do that. I mean, if you're okay with $315, it's not a big deal. We're not talking that much money. In reality, Patrick and Brenda are probably right. It's usually less than 10%, but this case got solved quicker, so the fine wasn't as big as it normally is in a lot of these cases.
Mr. Hammonds is in your shadow there. I agree with you, Mr. Sammons. I'd like to move on, but we need to clarify this a little tighter within our staff. Mr.
Yes, I
Hammonds.
think routinely staff does talk in round numbers again, but I don't think we say it's precisely this. Otherwise, we wouldn't give you the numbers that we give you. We deal with dozens and dozens of these every week, every month. Keep in perspective, we've had violations here for a very long time. We've had numerous cases, and that's the bottom line. This is the resolution of that, a very reasonable resolution. We see no reason to continue, but
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Flagg.
Mr. Gorski, are you saying you never received any certified mail from Putnam County on this case?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Tell
What
me
I'm
what you're
saying, Mr. Flagg, is that after I had met with the magistrate and I went through with Patrick, I went back to their office, and we had a discussion with Brenda, of which John was party to, and also Patrick was there. And we were supposed to have a meeting where they were going to go ahead and get the facts and figures and find out what it takes for a few certified letters, a couple pictures, you know, no extraordinary means. We were going to, once they got those numbers together, they were to contact me via email, because they knew that I wasn't in town. And at that point in time, I'd go over it with them, they could show me a breakdown, and then we'd move right along. But I never got that email for the meeting, which never occurred, nor did I get an email telling me for the last magistrate's session,
Okay,
what the date and time is on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, would not the magistrate know that due process and all of those procedures are required? I know that Commissioner Harris have a recommendation to table. My recommendation for the board to consider would be to reduce the fine to $500, and let's still give him the 3 months, so that we're not taking all of the, the administrative costs. We cannot play with that, but I just think that would be a fair compromise.
Mr. Flagg, Mr. Chairman, I concur. I actually wrote down 510.
And I was not looking on your
I know,
test sheet.
because that kind of split the difference, and there could be room for error, and it seems like there is in this case. So I concur.
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Motion second on the floor. Any further discussion?
Question?
I still, well,
Go ahead.
hold on. I still want to, if there was conversation with the verbiage of 10%, I think fairness warrants us in this particular case to go with that with corrections of not to use that verbiage anymore. Can you consider that?
Say that again, Mr. Chairman.
I don't, the fact that our staff used the word 10%.
I think if a person is in general conversation with a citizen, I agree with you that they should not discuss anything financially
Right.
to give anybody any
Clause should
idea.
be there.
Wait and tell them, listen, be patient. This is going to have a proper hearing, things of that nature. But I still don't think that that gets the responsible party off the hook from knowing that if staff is in a general conversation with them, that there is a such thing as a magistrate, there is a such thing that there is a hearing, and even today, there is a hearing there. So I don't think there was a promise made to Mr. Gorski. I think someone was trying to help him by sharing with him what they thought an average may be. And that's the way I would have taken it if he had already gone before the magistrate before. So he knew that part of the procedure, and he also knew that the magistrate had the jurisdictional authority to tell him what his ultimate fine would be. And I think we're being extremely generous and considerate.
We're going to find out right now.
Okay?
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Okay, carries. Sorry, Mr. Gorski, 4-1, $500.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir. Mr.
The next case is another fine reduction request, 2015-00257. Actually, the next two are joined together. 114 Lynn Drive in Palaca, Jorge Perez. This dealt with pigs, cows, and junk on the property. It took a little over a year to get it resolved, and we actually, animal control went out and removed the pigs because they were in such bad condition. Staff is recommending that the $5,600 fine plus $100 administrative fee be reduced to $837 if it's paid within 180 days. The special magistrate concurred with that recommendation. Mr. Perez was not at the meeting.
What about today?
I've not seen.
Perez? Okay. Commissioners? Comments?
Mr. Sammons, is
Yes.
this place located out in Hollister?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's been doing this when I was a produce manager at Miller Enterprises out there. He's been collecting my produce and feeding his pigs
Yeah, that's what he
for
does.
a long time.
Yep.
That was the father. This is the son that's
Right.
dealing with this.
Well, I think the father was mostly the reason, and the sons stepped up to the plate a little bit, but
What's your pleasure, board members?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the special magistrate's recommendation.
Motion on the floor?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Pigs. More pigs.
the other property that Mr. Perez owns, 116 Lynn Drive in Palaca, is also basically the same case, pigs without special use permit and junk and debris. He owned it the entire time. We're recommending that the fine on this property be reduced to $900 and
So
the
moved.
$550 fine plus
Motion on the
$100
floor?
district fee.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Okay. The next two cases, if we can get them up on the board, now that we have two computers, I'm not sure how to do that, are requests for abatement. Sure it's going to work. Doesn't look like it. Anyways, this is a case that started in 2014 at 102 Crane Lane in Crescent City. Property was first seen on April 3rd, 2014. I won't go through the whole thing. It's an unsafe mobile home. Basically, it's been left to rot on the property, and staff is recommending approval to abate the property. I got the other computer going, but not ours.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I think one picture speaks 1,000 words, and that picture looks really bad. And I make a motion that we concur with the special magistrate and authorize the abatement.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Mr. Sammons. Next case.
The next case is 2014-0435, 124 Possum Walk Road in Satsuma. Bruce Dodd is the owner. He actually got a permit. This is another unsafe mobile home. Mr. Dodd did get a permit, although he never did anything while he had the permit. But since that time, he has knocked the mobile home down and has piles of junk on the property. And it's overgrown, so we want to abate this property as well.
So moved.
Mr. Dodd is gone. He's somewhere, I don't know where he's at.
Okay, a motion on the floor?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries.
Okay, Brian's going to take over now.
Okay. Brian, it's rare we get these items on the agenda. Can you give a little explanation of what we're doing here?
Yes, these are essentially mistakes that the department has made. One of them is an old mistake having to do with bad information on a lien and having it recorded. The other one is, well, I'll get to that one in a moment. The first one involves a code case a code case that had a lien for fines and liens going back to 2003. Subsequently, we had to actually abate the property in 2006 and placed a lien on that. In both of these cases, when preparing the lien, or in this case, when preparing the lien, the document actually had one of three names misspelled, and the other two names or all three names were initials only. So you really couldn't identify who the parties in the lien were. And we have a basic problem, is that when liens are recorded, they're all cross-referenced in public records by name only. So if you've just got a bunch of initials there, it could be a whole bunch of different people. They are not recorded by or cross-referenced by parcel number which is a real problem for us. And it's a real problem for the real estate community. But in this case, this property ultimately went to a tax deed sale, and the person who purchased that tax deed did their homework. The title search that was done in the tax deed process simply did not pick up the liens, which again is not surprising. And again, it's not the purchaser's fault here. You've got an innocent third party that purchased the tax deed. He did his homework, and again, we're requesting the release of that lien. It would have just been an accident, the way the lien was prepared, for it to have actually been picked up.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Hammonds, Commissioners? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for release of the code enforcement liens.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to release that lien.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
The second case involving property at 106 Park Road in Interlochen. This came about, and this is, I hate to admit, purely my mistake. This came about when a constituent of one of the commissioners brought me two properties that they were interested in, and we were discussing the problems we have with a lot of these things where you get large mounting liens on them, and it impedes the recycling of the property back into the public domain, if you will. In this particular case, the purchaser did their homework again, approached us prior to buying a tax deed. They approached us, talked to us about this particular property. I had confused two properties, the two properties that were brought to me by that constituent. One of them clearly had a foreclosure and had certain issues that we could deal with. I confused this one with the one that had a foreclosure on it. And that constituent ultimately went and bought the tax deed based on what I told them. Subsequently, they did pull permits, fix what was a condemned structure, and we have finalized out that structure and everything's taken care of. It is a lien for fines and fees that totals about $4,500. And again, it's purely my mistake in confusing two properties, but it would be unfair to take it out on the property owner in this case.
Any
So
questions? We got a motion?
Second.
Second, and any further discussion? Hearing
Mr.
none.
Chairman?
Yes.
Just, again, the director's acknowledgement and commentary is extremely fair, impartial, and he accepts the responsibility, and that alone is commendable.
I agree. Absolutely.
Well stated. We motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we have a 10 o'clock certain for planning and development for a hearing. We're going to take a recess until that time of 7 minutes.
You ain't playing today, Mr. Chairman.
We on today.
If there's anything on here that you need to stay for.
Yeah. How about you? Our constitutional queen.
Good trip. Here comes Joe.
That one was working. I unplugged that one.
2016 at this time. And we are going into planning and development. We have a hearing set for the creation of the Melrose Historic District. And I think we're well represented to the right of the chambers here. Good morning, folks. Thank you for being here. All right. Mike?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commission. Apologize for the delay. Mike Brown, Putnam County Planning and Development Services. The motion before you today is HR 16-001. The request is to create, is notice of intent to create a historic district committee for the Melrose Historic District. The applicant are the residents of the Melrose Historic District. Just a little background. As you are aware, Putnam County adopted an area designated as the Melrose Historic District in the comprehensive plan, figure A14. Specifically in the comp plan, policy A155 calls for the county to preserve and enhance the character of the Melrose Historic District through establishment of land development code regulations that allow for the creation of a historic district committee and provide criteria for the historic district committee to create architectural standards and regulated work items. Subsection 40403F of the Land Development Code provides the option for residents of any historic district to form a historic district committee. The ultimate creation of any historic district committee must be approved by a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners before the committee takes any actions pursuant to this section. That's the reason we're here today. Here is a copy of the area. In blue, green is the area within the Melrose Historic District. At the time of the adoption of this map, there was a buffer also included, but that is not included in the actions that would be the responsibility of the committee if it is instituted by the board. One of the main requirements of becoming a committee is submitting a written notice of intent to the Planning and Development Services Department. And they have done that. A statement the written notice of intent must include a statement for the purpose of forming the committee, a list of proposed initial members, proposed articles and bylaws, a list of all names of property owners within the district, and proof of a properly noticed meeting for establishing of the initial committee. Section 40403F of the Land Development Code has a list of additional requirements which talk about memberships, or what a quorum is, length of terms, and a bunch of other items. The Historic Committee, if approved, shall perform all the historic preservation-related duties otherwise to be performed by the Zoning Board of Adjustments as set forth in Section 404 of the Land Development Code, including submitting the nomination and findings and recommendations for the district to the Planning Commission on the nomination of sites, buildings, structures, and objects for historic register pursuant to the procedures in the Land Development Code, conduct initial review of the findings for certificates of appropriateness and economic hardship, and really any provision of Section 404 of the Land Development Code where the Zoning Board of Adjustments is provided with certain duties and powers should be read to provide a properly formed historic district committee with the same powers and duties except in the case of an appeal of a decision for the historic district committee. Any appeal by them still has to go before the Zoning Board of Adjustments, so there's some protection there. And I present you this just so you have an idea and everybody else has an idea of what the responsibilities of the historic district committee would be if you so decide to approve them. The Melrose Historic District is designated in the future land use map. A written notice of intent to create the historic district for Melrose has been submitted as required in Section 404 of the Land Development Code. The stated purpose of the committee is to be the primary interface with Putnam County officials on all matters of historic preservation in Melrose. The name of the primary contact person was included as required, and it is Miss Linda Kemp, and she's here, and I'm sure she will speak to you today. The purpose of the proposed committee includes 4 members which own property in the designated historic district. A copy of the proposed bylaws was included in the notice of intent and meet all the requirements listed in the Land Development Code for the bylaws. The notice of intent included a list of all the persons who own property within the Melrose Historic District, the most current mailing address and each parcel number, and included a list of all the, part of the responsibilities of the committee was to contact all the owners and give them an update that what their intention was to attempt to create the committee, and ask for their concurrent support, negative response, or otherwise. Of all the, they did send out the appropriate notice to all the landowners. 25 property owners responded indicating support for creation of the committee. There were no negative responses, and then there were 51 property owners who did not respond and therefore whose opinion is unknown. And those all are three requirements that are in the code, or the three options in the code, then the Land Development Code, that they are required to tell us what those numbers are. So they met that test and requirement in the code. The notice of intent included a notice of the meeting to establish the initial committee and minutes from that package, or minutes from that meeting. Staff finds that the notice of intent to create the committee includes the minimum requirements for the written notice as intended. Notice of intent to create the Historic District Committee set forth in paragraph 40403F4 of the Land Development Code. In addition, the proposal to create the Historic Committee meets the membership and other requirements set forth in section 40403F of the Land Development Code for such committee. Planning Commission at its June 8th, 2016 meeting unanimously recommended approval of the request to create the Historic Committee for the Melrose Historic District. Staff recommends adoption of the attached ordinance, which is included in your package, for the creation of the Melrose Historic District Committee. Any questions of staff at this point? There was a lot there, I know.
I'll start on my right with Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, thank you so much, and I do want to say it's been a pleasure working with you and the citizens of Melrose area on this. I have a few concerns, and I'll just kind of take them in order. I contacted the attorney about a situation, and I think this will be for you, Mr. Manning, more than you, Mr. Brown. The document you sent me said the committee had to operate in the sunshine, if I remember reading that, but I don't remember reading it in the documents you sent me, that the committee, and do they realize that they cannot speak to each other after this moment?
No, well, I may not have had it in the write-up. It is a requirement in the code, and in the ordinance, the draft ordinance, that is also included as a requirement in the ordinance.
So they'll be operating the same as we are, so
Exactly.
you cannot talk to yourselves, period. You can have a conversation with yourself, but not with your neighbor.
Right.
Well,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
that's a broad statement, Commissioner Harvey. I mean,
Well,
on the subject of Melrose Historic District.
Concerning Melrose Historic District. The other concern I have, and is the structure, this comes from the Melrose Preservation Society, but we're asked to approve the Melrose Historical District Committee. And what's the structure there?
The society, let me start over. The district committee will operate in and of itself with no direct formal responsibility to the
society.
Yeah.
Okay, so
to
it's
the
going to
other
be a
group.
separate.
They deal with their issues as it's laid out in the code, and they have those responsibilities. That Historic Melrose group does not have any say or authority over this committee.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, and you probably are aware, there is some crossover on membership.
Right.
But
Two separate committees,
yeah,
basically.
two separate committees.
Two separate entities. Okay, Mr. Chairman, just two more. What happens, Mr. Brown, when the boundaries want to be changed or need to be changed on that historic district, do they make a recommendation back to the planning commission?
That would be two things. Yes, that would be part of it, but it would be a land use map amendment because it's adopted map in the comp plan. So it would come before the Board of County Commissioners for 2 hearings like any other map amendment.
Okay,
So, yeah.
and I did have a question posed to me today. What about the buildings that are dedicated as historic on the state or federal register? Will the county be adopting those buildings on our register?
We could. It would be a petition from the committee. If the committee is created, they would petition to include those, and that could happen, yes.
And it should probably happen, correct?
I would not disagree with that statement.
Mr. Chairman, that's the only questions I have, sir.
Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Palliser.
Mr. Brown, having never done one of these and have no experience in it, is there a generic, basic format for laying out one of these historic districts?
This is the first one in Putnam County, so you're not the only one who's going through this first. I mean, staff is too, and we're working.
Well, I didn't know if you used a guide from maybe some other area of the state.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking from what I've heard for the creation of as the Land Development Code was developed to incorporate these requirements, and the comp plan, I understood at the time they looked at St. Augustine real closely, looked at what Jacksonville was doing up in the Riverside area also. That is where that came from. We're trying to work, as staff, we recognize we probably don't want to get as detailed and down in the weeds as St. Augustine does.
Right.
So we're trying to work with the group out there and be flexible and make something that works for everybody, the county, the citizens of the district, and other interested. I don't know if that answers your story, but it answers your question.
It does sort of, kind of, as best you can with it, but I guess my follow-up, and that's probably a moot point, was is there anything that's unique about this that might stand out as something that we, would be want to be particularly knowledgeable of that is a little different maybe from something done elsewhere? And like you said, I agree St. Augustine's would be way more stringent and tight than this would be.
Yeah, I don't foresee anything at this point, or I'm not aware of anything at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple ethics training concerned to the Sunshine Law Commissioner Harvey just spoke of. Is it a requirement here?
It's
by our
not necessarily a requirement. I've been trying to work with the initial committee and the members as they created to get to this point. And although specifically the code says county staff will not staff that committee, so they're responsible for their own staffing and everything. I'll continue to work with them.
If you could,
one of the things will be giving them information
just
on Sunshine.
a review of the Sunshine Law will help them stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, what prompted this overlay, we got 2 different committees here, or I'll call them that for conversation's sake right now, but your concern was over big box stores and the retail corridor, 21 and 26 particularly, that started all this. But I noticed this overlay only takes in the residential portion of Melrose. So is there any intent to expand those boundaries, or is the Historic Society the ones that are creating the overlay for the business district?
They're going to have to answer their ideas for expansion. I know right now, the map as it stands is what's covered, would be covered by the committee if the committee is created. And, I mean, it's clear in the comp plan, it does say commercial businesses are allowed within the historic district. It doesn't say what type of business, but it doesn't exempt commercial businesses.
I understand that, but their concerns initially were for the commercial corridor, which would be the major highways, those 21 and 26. So I was a little taken that wasn't included here, so. No, we're going to have you up in just a minute. And the reason I say that is we have a recording going, and we want you to be heard in your statements. But I'll ask it later. But I want to ask it of staff right now, because I know this is the first time we've done this.
It would not go all the way to 21. It does encompass part of 26, because it crosses over State Road 26.
Commissioner Harvey.
Mr. Manning would like to.
Oh, yes.
Just a couple of points for clarification. In answer to your second question, the creation by our code of the committee is limited to that area which currently exists as the historic district. So if there's going to be any expansion in the future, if the committee is created, they'd bring a recommendation for that in the future. And obviously, if the committee isn't created, then that would continue to be a function of staff. As to your first question, yes, it is important for the committee, if established, to realize that, you know, everything that applies to Putnam County as a government entity will apply to them, including the sunshine laws and the public records laws and the ethics laws and accountability laws and whatnot. And I think it would be prudent for them to bring in counsel to give them direction and make sure that they're doing all those things properly.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Mr. Brown? That's it? Okay.
I concur with what I'm hearing. I think that it's crucial that the line of responsibility and accountability is established on the front side. I think everybody that I've spoken with feel extremely good about, you know, this happening. And I just want to make sure that the old rule of thumb, if you start out right, you can end up right. And I just think that if we have them looking at establishing who their legal counsel is going to be on the front side, so that ethics training, sunshine law, public records, all of those things, before they even think about appointments, there, so that the individuals who are ultimately going to be appointed will know what they're subject to. You know, and I think that many individuals want to serve in a lot of capacities, and if it was just simply serving, you know, would be people lined up. But when they find out all of these specifics here and then what you can't do, sometimes it narrows the pot.
Okay. I'm going to open up the hearing now to public comment. We're going to do it in two phases. We're going to do against and then for. So anybody against this proposal, it's your time to speak now. Seeing none, we'll bring the fours up. All right. Come on. And each of you, if you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, while she's coming, we do also have the testimony from the planning board, and if they want to just pretty much say that there's nothing changed from what they've said on record already, then that's also acceptable.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Linda Kemp. I live in Melrose. I am president of this committee. If you would approve us, I'm not sure. But just wanted to let you know that our main purpose is to preserve the historical nature of Melrose. We're not looking to address commercial zoning or anything like that, except if they were in the historic district. We would like to add a lot of the homes to the historic register. We understand there's only 2 on there now. There are 60-plus homes in this historic district, and a lot of them are on the state register and some on the federal, and we'd like to get all of these integrated so that these buildings are recognized as historic buildings. And there has already been research done. There's a very thick book that we have where they came and they described each and every home in the district. So we're trying to get a copy of that and have that as part of our documents to document the historic district. So that's basically, what we're trying to do right now.
Okay, Mrs. Kemp, I'll see if we got questions, commissioners, for Mrs. Kemp. Anybody?
I'd like to offer a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
There might be more people.
There's
Let me-
other
yeah.
people that want to speak.
Let me go through this.
She's the president.
Good point.
Okay.
Before you do that, let me just say, you mentioned the Ethics Committee. I understand the sunshine laws, but I think a refresher course, if you have such a thing in ethics, we'd be all happy to attend that. We want all of our meetings to go, per the guidelines in the sunshine.
I think that if we had a representative of that capacity come to your meeting, a scheduled meeting.
would be great, too.
It's a good opportunity. It can get really deep on this subject.
I just want to talk about HMI, Historic Melrose Inc. Historic Melrose Inc. has, I don't know how many years they've been established, but we went to them and asked to be a subcommittee because we wanted to work on this issue. And they only meet, the public meeting they have is once a year. They have quarterly meetings of their board. We have 2 of the board members here today. But we've been meeting every month, the last Monday of every month for the past 8 months. and I am feeling we will continue to do that, especially because we are only allowed to speak about our issues at these public meetings. So just want to make that clear.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Kemp.
Thank
Anybody else speaking for the project? If you would come up now, name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Stasha Rudolph. I live at 222 Southeast 5th and 652 State Road 26. 2 questions. I'm also the secretary of the proposed historic committee. One of you asked a question about the residential versus the commercial on 26. The actual map does include part of 26, and the most significant historical buildings are actually on 26, and they are in there. Going forward, after approval, do we want to expand? Possibly, but I think our biggest concern is now is within the historic district, there are key buildings, the old church, the funeral home, Mossman Hall, that are not on the historic register of Putnam County, but they are on the national, they are in the district, and we have a few people on the committee that are willing to do the heavy lifting. As Linda already mentioned, we meet once a month, we do a lot of work, we wrote the bylaws, and I do have professional biographies of everyone that's on the committee, because I want you to understand that we have had professions in the past, we have been in Melrose for a long time, and the main thing that unites us is that we all work very hard and we all love Melrose and live there. So we're the first line of defense if somebody doesn't like what we're doing, and we understand that. And we understand the legalities, and we understand that we are not commissioners, and we understand we're not the zoning board. But somebody that lives in Melrose that cares about it needs to do all the detailed work because it hasn't been done yet. And I think everyone we know in the county is probably strapped, but there's an interesting thing that there is a National Register of Historic Places, there's a State Register of Historic Places, and then there's a County Register of Historic Places, all for Melrose. Guess what? None of them match. Okay, so we have to do some work there. That's okay. We have a lot of people that have done part of the work. What we want to do is finish it. So if the board would allow me to pass out the biographies, that way you will understand that we're serious people, and whatever we need to do, we will do to make this happen the right way.
Thank you,
Can I
Secretary
approach?
Rudolph. Yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Who come forward now?
Need us to do any other work for this now?
How are you today?
Good. How are you all doing today?
Very well.
My name is Judy McLaren, and I live in Melrose, and I am on the executive council of the Historic Melrose. What the two previous ladies have suggested is that they are continuing an effort that started back in the 80s for the Melrose to become a historic district and enjoy some of those benefits that keep the community looking as charming and wonderful as it does. The two package stores did end up on the major highway, but that probably would have happened anyway. So we took it as a clue that we needed to move forward and really establish that which would benefit Melrose, and it is a historic town. The other application that we have pending is in Alachua County for our rural designation. So these two things are working hand in hand, and we need different people doing one side, other people doing the other side. Most of the people here are doing both sides. So please forward this. This application would be a benefit to Putnam County, because then we can create a bigger tourist attraction, if you want, with all of the proposed new people coming into the area. So this is supported by the Historic Commission, or HMI as it says, but there's only a few people in that, and they are been on the county or in the commission for a long time, and the new blood has arrived. So please do pass this forward. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. McLaren. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us this morning. My name is Jill McGuire. I don't actually live in Melrose proper. I live on Lake Santa Fe, a couple miles north, and I'm the president of the Santa Fe Lake Dwellers Association. And I just wanted to let you know that our organization is very much in favor of this new committee. We feel like it can help us reach across with the board and get better protections for our wonderful historic town of Melrose. My daughter went through Melrose School, a historic structure, and we, as lake dwellers, we recognize Melrose as the hub of Lake Santa Fe with its wonderful history. So we feel like this is very much necessary to and past due. So we ask for your approval. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your commitment, Ms. McGuire. Anybody else? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman.
We're going to go to Commissioner deliberation, and we'll start off with you, Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just really want to say, since I got here, it's been a pleasure working with this group. Commissioner Cornell, Ken Cornell from Gainesville, from Alachua County, and as you've probably heard me say many times, we meet out there in Melrose, usually the last Monday of each month, with Clay County and also Bradford County. And Ken has really took the bull by the horns on this, on the Alachua County side. And it's just been a pleasure to work out there, and I just want to make that a public statement real quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments? Commissioner
Yeah. I want to congratulate you all for all stepping forward and being the leaders and getting it done. And I'm really glad to see you come forward, all of you, and make this a reality. So thank you for doing that. And if you're ready for a motion, I'll be glad to make one, unless anyone else
I just
has
want to
a-
make the statement. Many famous people have found their way to this historic town in Florida.
Yeah.
My favorite is a picture of Cassius Clay at Chapini's on the wall. How did he get to Melrose? He really did. This is great.
Not by the interstate, let me
No,
assure
he
you.
did. But he actually went fishing there. I thought that was pretty cool.
Will you give me the honors of making the motion, please?
Certainly.
Thank you so much. I'd like to move adoption of this resolution to create a historic district committee for the charming Melrose Historic District.
I'd like to second that.
What elegance. Do we have a second? You got a
Second
second
that,
from the
yes.
commissioner? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was the loudest aye we got all morning. Congratulations.
You did that very well.
All right. Moving on with the agenda.
All right, next item is plat vacation 16002. This one should look a little familiar. The applicant is the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund. This is for a partial vacation of the Florida Park subdivision. As you remember, probably 2 months ago, you did a partial vacation of, I think it was 6 lots that Charles Alford owned within the same subdivision. The majority of the subdivision is owned by the state. They have decided, they realized after the previous plat vacation, they had never vacated their portion of the plat. So they have requested to vacate their portion of the plat, including the roads. Just for background information, the Florida Park subdivision was platted and recorded back in October 13th, 1925. Blocks and roads have not been developed or utilized in the fashion they were depicted in the 1925 survey. The portion of the plat subject to the request is owned by the applicant, and the parcels all the parcels and roads are designated Ag 2 on the future land use map with Ag zoning. Here's clearly an idea of an aerial. You can see nothing is developed. The vacated area is that highlighted in cross-hatched in red, and that's all that the state owns. Future land use is primarily conservation. That has been changed. The portions that the state own is all conservation, part of the Cross Florida Greenways. Zoning is agriculture. Pursuant to the Land Development Code, plat vacation needs to be initiated by the property owner, which this one is. The County Commission will hold a public hearing to consider and determine whether the request to vacate is consistent with the comp plan, is in the public interest, and there's no substantial interference with vested property rights. The final order vacating the plat, if approved, will be recorded in the official records of Putnam County. And if approved, the vacating, all streets and right-of-ways will become, that have not become necessarily for use by the traveling public will be vacated. The property will be returned to acreage, and any future development will be consistent with the comp plan and land development regulations. Staff finds that the Florida Park subdivision meets the definition of antiquated subdivision set forth in 163, 3164, 5 of the Florida statutes. County comp plan calls for the county to reduce the number of platted lots and antiquated subdivision. The lots as platted do not meet the requirements of Ag 2, future land use, and do not comply with the current code requirements of the Ag zoning district. The vacation of the parcels would not interfere with any vested property rights, and the request to vacate the portion of the Florida Park subdivision is consistent with the comp plan and is in the public interest. Staff recommends approval of the request to vacate all of the Florida Park subdivision except Block 1, lots 21 to 30, including Block 2, lots 21 to 26, lots 34 and 35, Block 5, lots 31 through 35, including Block 6, lots 7, 8, and that portion of Cayuga Avenue from County Road 310 south to the south line of Lot 24, Block 2, is shown on Map Book 3, page 20 of the public records from Putnam County as stated in the attached resolution, and return all that property to acreage. Any questions of staff at this point?
Okay, questions, Commissioner, starting on my left this time. Commissioner Harris? Sorry.
I don't. I don't have any questions. I think it's a good idea. We've been needing to get rid of some of these plats for a long time, and it saves a lot of problems for our county and money and responsibilities we might have with an undeveloped subdivision.
That's correct. Commissioner Flagg?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Harris said exactly what I was going to say.
Stole your thunder. Times 3. Commissioner Harvey?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, does this clean up that entire area? Is this the
Yeah,
last?
There is one property owner that owns two parcels, maybe three, there may be 3 or 4 lots within there. And that is why we're keep maintaining a portion of Cayuga Road, because that runs along his property. He's chosen not to vacate his portion. So other than that, yes.
That was going to be my next question, is why are we excluding off of Cayuga Avenue? But you've got one landowner out there that hasn't wanted to vacate his parcel
Because
yet.
that individual has not chosen to vacate, and we have to maintain access to
But
his
after
parcel.
that, if he ever does, then this will clean that whole area up.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Has he given any reason for his unwillingness to?
I don't know. I thought so.
I mean,
A vestiture would be very hard.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm looking at the map and the legal description. The recommendation is to vacate all of Florida Park SD, and then it accepts out a number of blocks in Perrins. But after the Perrins, then it goes on, and ex Hibiscus Palaca / Ocala Highway, also known as County Road 310, and a portion of, how's that pronounced?
Cayuga.
Cayuga Avenue?
Cayuga Avenue, yeah.
From County Road 310 south to the south line of Lot 24, Block 2. That's included in what's being vacated, the way this is written. It's not accepted out.
Then, if that's,
And I believe the intent was to accept out that portion.
right.
So that would need to be included in the portion that's accepted out. And then I also had a question. Looking at the map, there's a couple of other parcels that are highlighted in bold. Are those parcels not included?
They're not included in this because they were vacated 2 months ago.
Okay.
So they were not included in the description for this vacation.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is in the actual motion, I think this needs to be revised to accept out that portion of Cayuga?
Yeah, Cayuga Avenue. Okay.
That's indicated here on the map.
All right, yeah, that was my mistake on.
It's okay. We found it. Good job, Mr. Manning. All right, this is a public hearing where we will open it up to the public at this point, and we'll do the same format. Anybody to speak against this would be your time at the podium. Seeing none, we'll go to 4. Seeing none, there's no representatives here that I see, is there? Mr. Brown. Okay, we'll go to Commissioner deliberation, starting on my left again.
I think I've expressed my opinion already.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All right.
Same.
Anybody?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion on the floor?
Well, I think we need to clarify.
Yes,
the
in that
words
motion, you need to
accepting.
accept out the portion on Keoka.
Okay, my motion is the revisions that was made by Mr. Manning. That's the intent of the motion.
Well, those revisions can be made in the minutes, in the resolution.
Second.
I think it's clear from the record that it's accepting out that portion of
Right.
Very well.
Cayuga as described here.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, it carries. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Staff has nothing else at this point.
Okay. Next on the agenda, appointments, commissioners. Starting on my right now.
I have none.
I have none. I have one, Peggy Cone for District 2 to the Fair Authority. We have all our information.
She's going to be reappointed.
Yes, reappointed, please.
I have none.
I have some.
Okay, floor is yours.
I am working on the employer representative for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, subject to agreement of the corporation, so I'll have that next month. On the Fishing Fund Advisory Committee, Joe Nickel resigned, and I would like to appoint Ken Pagano. He is a member of the Willaca Bass Club and Bass Masters Group, and he is willing to serve.
Did you say Pagano?
Pagano. On the Planning Commission, T.C. Miller has resigned. He has served us for 16 years, and he needs to be free to travel. So we thank him for his work, and I would like to recommend that we appoint Tom DeSantis, who lives in Georgetown. He's a previous commissioner in another area in Florida and has worked a lot with planning and zoning. So I would like to recommend him to take T.C. Miller's place.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move passage of the appointments for the Fair Authority and Fishing Fund Advisory Committee and Planning Commission as requested.
Noted.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Starting to develop some urgency for the members of the board to appoint someone to the Value Adjustment Board. So if you could come up with an appointment for that position at your next meeting, I think that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, commissioners, if you can make an effort, bring that person forward by the next meeting would be good. All right, with that being said, County Administrator, anything for us?
Well, yes, I think we have some discussion on the proposed budget for the coming fiscal year, sir. I've got a few general comments I'd like to make relative to that.
Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Ms. Popel for the untold hours that she has spent in preparing the balanced budget for this year. She's put in an awful lot of work on that, and we have a great deal of appreciation for the effort that she has made. And so the budget is balanced, as you see before you, and it is balanced in accordance with the discussions that have been held among members of the Budget Review Committee and those members of the Board of Commissioners who attended those Budget Review Committee meetings. The grand total budget is lower than the current year's budget. It is marked by the absence of capital construction funds for the jail and the East Putnam wastewater system, both of those major construction projects having been completed. So there is no need, of course, to budget capital dollars for those in the coming fiscal year. You will recall during the initial meeting of the Budget Review Committee in March, and I believe all members of the board were in attendance at that meeting, where we had some preliminary discussions entering into some of the budget work, that we had some general discussions about the fiscal state of the county. We offered you a couple of significant cautionary notes relative to our financial position. One of those being the very grave concern that Ms. Popel and I share relative to the continued use and reliance on the county's cash reserves to balance the budget. We have in previous fiscal years relied on cash reserves to a significant extent. Ms. Popel's predecessor and I repeatedly have expressed concern to you about our dependence on cash reserves to balance the budget, and we continue to express those deep reservations to you about our reliance on that. It is a reliance born out of necessity. We admit that, but it still nevertheless is problematic. We also advised you that after several years we would no longer be in a fiscal position to continue to absorb increases in medical insurance costs for employees. We had done that for a number of years to relieve the pressure on employees simply because the county did have some money in its medical insurance reserve fund and to help employees because the county was in no position to grant any increase in compensation for employees. But we unfortunately now find ourselves in a position where the reserves in the insurance fund have been fully utilized and there is no money available to continue that practice. So this particular budget that is being presented to you, again, requires some significant fund balance or cash reserves to balance it, slightly more than $4.57 million in general fund balance. This amount, again, exceeds the comfort level of the budget officer and myself, but it is necessary due to the limited growth in other revenues, most notably the limited growth in the countywide tax base. This amount was also necessary in order to preclude any adjustment in the millage beyond the rollback rate. And as we developed the budget, we also developed a sense that an increase in the millage would not be well received. And that was our target goal, to try to develop a recommended budget to you that did not reflect an increase in the millage. At the last Budget Review Committee meeting, we did discuss the fact that we would probably be presenting to you a recommended budget that may contain a recommendation that we would ask you to consider going to the rollback rate, but if that calculation yielded a slightly higher tax yield for us, but not a significant adjustment in the millage. But consequently, this budget contains no adjustment, once again, in employee compensation for yet another fiscal year. And as I had stated just a few moments ago, that our practice to ease the budget on employees in the previous fiscal years in the county had relied on its insurance reserve fund to subsidize employees' health insurance costs. The county absorbed those increases in costs of the health insurance since it was unable to adjust compensation, but regrettably, reserves in that fund have been fully utilized and are no longer available. The county had been advising its department heads and those involved in the budgetary process that this practice would probably not be able to be continued in the future, and that it was highly likely that employees would have to suffer some increase in their medical costs, and that employees should be advised of that. Hopefully department heads in their departmental meetings and other employees and other individuals were advising employees of that and preparing them for this possibility. Unfortunately, when we began to notice that we were suffering some escalation in our claims experience, we began to develop some rather grave concerns that increase would have a significant impact on some employees, but until the actual rates were developed, it was unknown as to exactly what that impact might be on an individual basis. But the county had continued this practice of subsidizing health insurance costs, and as I said, we have fully utilized all the reserves in that health insurance fund, and in truth, the county probably extended this practice 1 year longer than it should have. But unfortunately, a rather imperfect storm of dwindling reserves, stagnant growth in the tax base, and other revenues not showing any significant increase once again leads us to a budget that provides for just merely basic delivery of services without any expansion, and a recommendation that the calculated rollback rate of 9.0914 be considered. This calculation is made using the data provided by the Property Appraiser's Office and following the formula used by the Florida Department of Revenue to provide the same tax yield as the current year. And as you all are aware, the budget is comprised of a number of balanced funds. Two other funds I think that are significant in some brief discussion is the Fire Tax Fund is currently balanced using and maintaining at the current 1.1 millage rate. That's the current rate and recommended to be continued in the coming year. And the Solid Waste Fund contains the household assessment rate for disposal of solid waste. That number will be formally set by the Solid Waste District in the future, but this proposed budget that we have tentatively before you contains a projected reduction in the assessment of $9 per household, from $334 to $325 for most of the county, and of course a smaller amount in household amounts in Crescent City and Palatka, which pick up their own waste in those municipalities. So, there's a lot of other discussion we could have in greater detail on parts of the budget, but I think generally that's kind of a broad picture, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leary. Commissioners, questions? Comments?
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Harvey?
I do want to applaud Ms. Papel and Mr. Leary on their hard work on this. I am very concerned that today we learned $4.57 million to balance the budget out of reserves. That is very concerning to me. One of the questions I had was about how could we pass a tentative budget without knowing the waste management fee, but we learned that today also. I do have a couple questions for Ms. Papel on item number 307 on the proposed revenue expenditure summary. We have $8 million in potential road projects. Do we know what those road projects are? Because out of our Better Place plan money, we're only committing to $2.7 million in road projects. So I'm sure that's a catch-all for all the federal and state.
It is.
and
It's the
projects.
ferry grant. It's several different grants, plus it's the last penny tax. But
It would be good for our citizens to know that, because it is a little confusing when we look at, because we also do out of the gas tax, we do road projects, and that's a little different. But thank you very much. Also, another question for you. You sent me an email yesterday concerning, and I do apologize I wasn't able to get here and meet with you personally, but our fund balance in the insurance was 2014 was $713,300. 2015, that looks to be a negative.
it was.
For $460,000. And you're projecting a negative fund balance of 1.6 million
I am.
this year. Wow. That's rather large, you know.
It is.
Okay.
Of course, I'll be bringing back a budget amendment in September to,
Yeah, I saw that on there, so, yeah, okay. One other question concerning that, if you don't mind. The insurance fund does, and you might help me on this one just a little bit, 506 shows a revenue including cash forward of 6.7 million. But this is going to show us with a 1.6 deficit before we do that. Is that correct? You might want to explain that a little bit.
please repeat the question.
Well, our fund balance here on insurance fund of 506 shows $6.7 million. Okay, that's going to be revenue included cash forward.
That revenue coming in
Okay. And
includes no cash forward.
no cash forward on that. Actually, it's a $1.6 million deficit.
What that 6.7 revenue is for next year is the money that we take out of employees' paychecks
Okay.
for their part of insurance, and the money that the board, that the clerk, that the tax collector, that the property appraiser, that the supervisor of elections, and that the sheriff contributes toward their employees' insurance. That's, all of that together represents $6.7 million.
If I may ask you another question, I believe I asked it to Ms. Allen here maybe a month or two ago. Our constitutional officers can set their own salaries and can they also do their own insurance requirements of how much they want to give to their employees? Or is that pretty much standard or mandated by us at this board level?
I believe that's a statutory, they're constitutional officers. We fund them, we hold the purse strings, but their powers are set by statute.
So they can pretty much set their own budgets and we don't really have any.
We hold the purse strings.
Okay.
And I don't have the statutes in front of me, but there's certain requirements they have when they present their budget request to us. There's a certain level of information they have to give us.
Okay.
And you decide how much money to fund them.
All right. One last thing, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I have said this from the time we had our first budget meeting. I am, the problem with our budget is we're all for it or we're going to be against it. We can't pull out little pieces of it until we finalize our budget. But I am not in favor of a new Parks Administration building with a conference room for the amount of $2 million when we're looking at our employees are going to drive by a building and yet we're going to ask them to raise their rates on their insurance, sometimes in double is what I looked at this morning when I got actually last night about 10 o'clock when I got your email and I got home. I just can't see how we can do that. The calls I get are not about a new administration building with a conference center. They're about fixing the fields, they're about opening parks. They're not about that. And I'm going to have to vote today without being able to take things out, but I'm not in favor of that, and I just want that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Who's next? I'll go. Mr. Harvey.
Yes, sir.
Concerning your last statement, you're mixing capital expenditures, and I'm having a hard time figuring out what you really mean there. We want to expand services in the Parks and Recreation Department with indoor activities. This building, and at the workshop, I'll remind you, you agreed with it 2 weeks ago. If it had these expanded services attached to it, if you could explain that. I mean,
Well,
I'm not picking on you here,
No,
but
I didn't agree to
you're
the
giving me
building.
mixed signals.
No, I didn't agree to the building, Mr. Chairman. What I agreed to was the fact that Mr. Leary had said that we could use some of this money in other areas for other parks. That's what I agreed to.
That's not what we heard.
Because I'm not for that. Our
We were
deputies work out of.
specifically talking about that building, and you said as long as it took in, let's face it, the
No, sir.
administrative staff is minute there. It's very small. So if you're talking a square footage that we were speaking of, the building is a multi-purpose building, is used for other amenities within recreation.
Yes,
and,
sir.
I'm confused. I mean, 2
shouldn't
weeks
be.
ago
It's
you were
very
for
clear.
it, and now you're not.
No, I'm not. I've never
Okay.
been for it.
All
What
right.
I'm for, our deputies work out of a patrol car with a computer there. Our Parks and Recreation can do the same. We don't need a new building out there for $2 million. If we look at the total spending of our Better Place plan, only 23 or 26% of our total spending is going to go to roads, from dirt to pavement this year.
Those dollars cannot be used outside of capital investment.
See that, but you're talking $10 million and only 23% is going to go to dirt to pavement roads. I would like to see more of that. I'd like to see parks opened up. I would like to see us save money for an administration conference center out there when we can afford to do it. But right now, we can't afford to do
You're
it.
still mixing maintenance monies with capital investment.
I'm really not. It's right here on your Better Place proposal.
Mr. Chairman, I also, again, recognize that these deficits and the use of reserves has been something that has been ongoing. The question is, when you have issues such as the jail, the need for the jail, and the threat of higher levels of government, federal government, or anyone taking control of that, it's not all we can afford, it's what we can afford. And I know that oftentimes when we do cherry pick and go in and look at specific line items there, and I think that again, staff is to be commended for presenting us what they have, but I do also think that somehow or another, because Putnam County is a training ground, we know that. We know that we're rural. That does not mean that we are any less important, that we are inferior, but we just don't have the revenue to balance the demand of services that we need. But how can we, at the end of the day, do all that we can to maximize the imbalance on what the impact is on each of our employees? And I think that number, we need to know what that number is going to minimize the impact there. We've been warned, and staff has certainly done an excellent job there. You cannot get a gallon out of a quart jug. You just can't get it. It's no way to get it. And I think that staff has done remarkable, but what are the options? It's not like, we are trying to raise taxes on anything and anybody, but we've just had this shrinking tax base, and we've been anemic for so long. And all of us, when we sit in meetings, and especially even when it comes down to public works projects, we're saying, let's take this road in, let's take that road in, let's enhance this, let's enhance that. And everything we say about enhancing services or enhancing the quality of our roads, that costs money. So at the end of the day, we've got to decide, and our businesses and our residents have done an excellent job on enduring these things. But I think the issue that I see more than anything is that we have not told over the years the citizens the true impact of cutting services, which, like cutting staff, there because of having this budget like it is. We've been trying to maintain, and I can't commend the staff enough on maintaining the levels of staff, and everybody's understaffed. We hear that every year, and it's almost as if the administrator gets the brunt of, you're doing this, you're doing that, and the five of us, this is the hand we have. When various companies are not prospering, Northeast Florida is coming back. Putnam County is still last in that line. We all were hoping for a comeback. It's not the property appraiser's fault that the property values are flatlined there. So I think the innovative thoughts and ideas of this board is really what will maintain what we need. Where do you cut? Where do you cut? It's easy to say, cut the taxes. Where do you cut? And how do you cut there? People who, and most of us are not, I'm going to say individuals who need the services of the jail, but do we compromise and put ourselves in violating people's constitutional rights to have a place? Because again, these people are accused of things.
We have no choice with the jail.
So,
No choice.
and that's just one example. Truth of the whole matter is East Putnam, for an example. In order for us to stimulate economic development, economic growth, infrastructure, we keep hearing that over and over and over. We don't have infrastructure. These businesses are looking globally. They're not just looking at Palatka, Northeast Florida. And if we don't have what we need there, state government, federal government continue to use words such as shovel-ready. How do you get it shovel-ready? You've got to put infrastructure in place. Right. How do you get infrastructure in place? Everything is not going to be a grant. Some of it is a match, and I think we've maximized the dollars, to accomplish some of these things. So we can pick this thing apart and make it, feel like that we're just tax and spend. But at the end of the day, the basic services that our citizens are requiring from us, we're doing our best to try to make that happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. Commissioner Harvey, I have to agree with what Commissioner Flagg said. I think it's, and our chair, about your comments about the recreation building. it is so hard for the public to understand that different money comes out of different pots and can be used in different ways. We can't take the money that we get in the Better Place plan and use it to, say, take care of the insurance problem for our employees.
Right.
It's not that we're taking $2 million out of our regular budget to do that. It's coming out of the Better Place plan, which must be used for bricks and mortar. So I want to make sure that we clarify that people understand that different monies from different areas come with different restrictions that it can be used for, and that we don't have the ability to say, well, we won't build this, and we can use it for something else that's a more pressing problem, because it's bricks and mortar and the other is, running the business and the cost of doing business. I think that the huge problem that I see, if you look at the big picture, is that our economy went down since 2005, and that our property values are down, and that's where we get the money to do most of the things to run the business. And we are slow to get back, but we are getting better. But at this point in time, our assessments are not enough, and we don't bring in enough taxes to do all the things that we need to do or that we want to do with the budget. So I just want to make sure that we clarify that we understand that for a long time, whenever anyone leaves the county, we have not filled that position, that we have employees that are doing the other people's jobs that have left, that everybody is stretched, that we have not had layoffs as some other counties have, that we have tried to just do it with attrition. If someone retires, we don't bring it in. So I think that people need to understand what we've been through and where we are and how we're trying to make things work. So I just want that understood, because I don't want to, I want to do the best we can for our employees, and I want to do the best we can with what we have to give the services that we've had. And we're not closing down things like our libraries and things that some counties have had to cut. So we have really done an admirable job with what we've had for a long time, and we're continuing to try to do that. And I just want to make sure that people understand that situation and that we're still recovering. And things are looking up, and I think we'll be better in the future. And we have certainly come forward with innovative ideas and ways to make things work.
Commissioner
And we
Harris.
still are looking further.
With that being said, you're in the real estate business, and you probably have a better perspective at the tax assessor's assignment than anyone sitting here. But can you talk to that a little bit and what you feel is going on in the market right now? Because it's pertinent to our employees and the insurance rates and cost of living raises. Everything has skyrocketed in that time period you've talked about, from '06 to '16. You think about the cost of goods and services to the average person. Our employees have not had a raise in that entire time.
No, they have not, and they're taking on more work to make things do better.
What do you feel is going on in the real estate business?
I think it's definitely better that sales are up. I think some of the other areas surrounding us, like St. Johns County, some of the areas that have more jobs, that have more benefits, like the beaches, more attraction for people, to live in, and their assessments are higher and their property values are higher. It's hard to compete with that.
I agree.
And but we are catching up. We're sometimes late to feel something, and we're late to recover. But I do think things are looking better, and probably Ben Bates, sitting in the audience, could give you the percentages off the tip of his tongue.
Mr. Bates, would you mind? Just your perspective on what you think property values will do. This is something we've been waiting on patiently for years, as you well know, and you being our insurance agent too, you bring a couple fresh perspectives to
Yes,
this
sir.
podium.
My name is Ben Bates. My address is 3400 Curl Avenue here in Palaca. I've been in business in real estate and insurance for over 41 years in Putnam County, and I'm very appreciative of that. As Commissioner Harris says, our real estate market is improving. It's a far cry from where it was, as you know, the bubble, as we call it. I call it an anomaly. I've never seen it in my life and will never see it again. People were doing things that just didn't make sense. We would have a contract that would flip 5 and 6 times from the time you wrote the first contract until it actually closed, doing that 04, latter part of 04, 05, 06, and first part of 07. That was a going on things, and property values was just escalating. Then when reality set in 09, 010, and 011, then things bottom out, and now things are beginning to turn around. To give you an example, in 2015, I don't have the numbers for 2016, and I'm going on memory, so I could be off a few. But when you look at what's happening in Putnam County compared to the surrounding counties, Putnam County, if my memory is correct, I think Mr. Hammond can correct me, was like 54 building permits, single-family homes, in 2015. You go north to Clay County, they had 850. You go north to Duval County, and I believe they had somewhere around 24 to 2,500. You go north to Nassau County, which is very similar to us population-wise, they had about 450. You come south to St. Johns County, and they led the entire Northeast at about 2,800 single-family permits. So when you're talking about a budget, which Mr. Leary has talked about, you're talking about services that continue to be mandated. The cost of providing these services is going up, yet the revenue is not going up on a pro rata share. And we understand that. Our average sales price in 2015 for, I think it was 713 residential sales, was right at $80,000. That's our average sales price. You go to Clay County, you go to St. Johns County, and you're talking somewhere around 200 to 225, and in some neighborhoods even more than that. So you're at a disadvantage on what you have to provide, and yet you have to provide many of the same services that they do. You have to provide sanitation. You have to provide the jail. We know that you weren't in favor of spending $18 million for a new jail, but it was better for you to be proactive in doing it for $18 million than some federal court dictating to you on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and answering to them, and you'd have probably spent $28 million rather than 18. Those are necessities in life that we have to deal with. So we're hopeful. The market is improving. The prices are going up. It appears that the average sales price for the first 6 months, I just did a study on that, has gone up almost 18%. But there's a couple of big sales in that kind of offsets it a little bit. But our appreciation in the average sales price, we're seeing a continual increase over the last 3 to 4 years, and we anticipate that continuing. But we just got ourselves in a decision, or in a position where that the product that we have to offer doesn't equate to the product that's being offered in surrounding counties. Therefore, you know, we're looking at 54 building permits. Now, those 54 units are going on the tax roll. St. Johns County is going to have 2,800. And folks, the first few years, those units don't require an awful lot of service, you know, bottom line. They do have the garbage, and a lot of that is spelled out. So I think that our county is in a position to move forward. I think we have to think very positive, and I think the leadership of the county has to think very positive, and we have to continue to do what we can to make our county as attractive as we possibly can. And that's tough to do when you have limited income. And that's what y'all have been faced with. You haven't had the advantage of additional tax revenue like other counties has that surround us, whether it be Marion, Volusia, or whatever. You're looking at some major growth areas in the state of Florida. We see there's some 300,000 people coming to Florida every year right now. Back during the down years, we were losing 50,000. But we're back so that we're gaining somewhere around 300,000 increase in population every year. Yet our county's population has what? Decreased, not increased. Several years ago, we were at 74, 75,000. Now we're down to about 70,000. So we're not growing. We're going in the opposite direction. So and all that's adding up, and we've got to continue to take the blinders off, to be progressive, and to do what we can to create situations in our counties so our citizens have more spendable income. And that's what we're looking at. That's a summation for what it's worth from my feelings, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But the numbers and all, trust me, I've got the numbers on what's going on in the county. Be happy to share them with you any way that I can. If there's no questions, then I'll
So you approve of the infrastructure grid that we've laid down in East Putnam and those sorts of things?
It's, the only bad thing about it is, Commissioners, 25 years late in coming. I mean, we needed it before that. Right. There's businesses that have closed in East Palatka because of no infrastructure. They could not afford the daily cost of operating costs for the well and for the source system, and they actually closed and went out of business. You know, and others was on the brink of doing that, and their businesses were being limited on what they could do, because what happens in the real world is that today you get a permit for a system. In 5 years, if you have to upgrade it, the laws have changed. When you got it permitted today, you got to have, I'm just going to use an example, 3 square feet per gallon of disposable waste as a drain field. They're going to pass a law at the state legislature over the next 5 years that increases that to 4. Well, when you're locked in and you don't have the additional foot, what do? Then you have to cut back, if you're a restaurant, on the number of seats and the number of people that you can serve, therefore limiting the capacity of that business to be successful. You know, so, but that was a vastly needed. And I think you're beginning to see that area expand, and you will see it expand more. 4-lane access is a big deal. You know, so a lot of improvements are on the horizon, and folks are doing a good job, and we need to continue to move forward and not backwards.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Leary.
You know, Mr. Bates alluded to this, but you know, it's frustrating for us, and you see, you folks see this because you see the same emails that we see. But to put together a budget when all your surrounding counties are extolling the growth of 4 and 6 and 8%, and in a lot of cases even higher than that, and you know, we're dealing with what we're dealing with, which is practically no growth, and it's, you know, it's disappointing to us to have to recommend to you a budget that does not provide anything for our employees, and in this particular year, a budget that not only doesn't provide anything for employees, in the case of health insurance, it causes some employees a negative impact, and you know, we can't do anything about that because of the situation with the insurance reserve, because of the situation we face with our cash reserves, you know, and you know, we don't live under a rock. You know, I hear the criticism about that, but to Human Resources credit. They've worked as hard as they can and as diligent as they can to try to craft a program going into the next fiscal year that offers some options for employees to choose that would mitigate that impact as much as possible, so that there's going to be impact to employees, but if they'll take the opportunity to look at what's been crafted and made available, they can mitigate that impact some. The impact is going to be there, although not necessarily for each and every one, but depending on an employee's individual situation, there's going to be impact, but it can be mitigated to some degree.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Bates if he could speak to just the insurance world, and particularly health insurance. But before that, as chairman, I want to go on your coattails about the chances we took through this recession. Building that water system and that wastewater system, East Putnam, was very proactive. It was gutsy.
Very much so.
We're criticized for it constantly, but I am still convinced that we will see our day of glory on that. Because we are ready. We are shovel ready. If there ever was a county, we're told that all the time, and it's just a matter of fact for that investment comes to Putnam. We're the next body of water coming inland from that number one chosen spot to relocate from those 300,000 people you're talking about coming into the state yearly. They go to the coastline. But I remember before the recession, they were coming here, and they were coming here fast and furious. And that we're ready for them when they come back again. I just wanted to put that in there.
And all of that's very true. You've got to have the infrastructure in place. When these businesses come to our county to look, they tell you where they want to be. If I may dilute and give you an example, when Walmart was looking for their distribution center, folks, you got to remember something. We were so close, except by, I don't know, we had Walmart distribution center in the bag. We had the third unit of Seminole in the bag. Tallahassee pulled the plug.
Yep.
We had them in the bag. Walmart bought the property. They owned the property. They were ready to move forward. Folks, that would have been somewhere between 600 and 1,000 jobs, making somewhere around 35,000 average with full benefits. Now, would that have made a difference in Putnam County during the 06, 07, 08, and 09? Seminole was approved. Permit was on the secretary's desk, and the then newly elected governor pulled it. They would have employed 2,500 people for probably 2 to 4 years during the construction period. If anybody was around in 78 and 80, when the first Seminole plant was being built, folks, you're talking about a recession. Interest rates were 18%. Prime rate was 22. And I will say this county didn't suffer. Why? Because Seminole's unit were being built. They were employed 2,000 to 2,500 employees to build a plant. They were buying concrete, block, building material from everybody in town. Every motel was full. Every restaurant was full. That would have happened with us if those two projects, tax base wise, the Seminole project alone, we wouldn't be sitting here if that unit was online complaining about budget shortfall, because that was a $1.2 billion enterprise coming into this county. And Mr. Leary and your tax people, I think you would agree, if we'd have had a $1.2 billion unit to go online, that would have impacted us financially. But that's neither here nor there. Things were happening. But what happens is these folks that are coming to town, they tell you where they want to be. When we were in a meeting and we were introduced to the consultant for Walmart, we were told we want to be between Crescent City and the Volusia line. And we said, knowing more than they did, that we had a new 4-lane road, we would have water and sewer, and it would be, we have a new industrial park. We think that would be a better choice. And the guy looked and he says, I don't think you heard me. We want to be from Crescent City to the Volusia County line. And if you can't find us 275 acres, tell me, and we'll go somewhere else. That was the mission. That was the task. And so that's how you have to operate, and you have to have the facilities in place to attract these folks. Absolutely. So much for that. Now, you wanted me to mention something about the insurance?
If you would, please, sir.
Okay. I've had the privilege of serving this county for 20-plus years with the insurance, and my job with your staff, who works hard, I mean really hard, is to provide our employees, and I call them our employees because, you know, they serve all of us, with the best possible plan that we can at the lowest cost to them to meet their needs. To give you an example, for the last 3 years, the plan has performed extremely well. All of you know about the Affordable Care Act that's been instituted. That's created a tremendous burden. 3 years ago, this county received a 6% rate increase, of which 3% of that was nothing but tax and fees, according to the new ACA. Last year, we got a 3% discount. That meant last year, we paid 3% than we did the year before. This year, we tried to, and your staff was very adamantly that they wanted to get the employees so every employee would have an affordable plan so it would not cost them anything. And basically, this was the first year that they were able to do that. The county has 2 plans. If you want to call it the core plan, which will not cost the employees anything. It's 100% paid by you for the employees. It costs, if my memory is right, and Miss Ann, I'm going from memory, so you may have to correct me, but our employee cost, I believe, is 75% for that plan, which is very, very rich benefits in today's world. If you look at the surrounding, oh, thank you. Let's see. If you will bear with me.
Take your time.
If you look at some other entities in our town, the city of Palaca contributes 85.5%, and for their the other plans they're doing for the base plan 75. So you're right in line with, you know, they're a little bit richer because you're offering your folks a 100% plan, which means it doesn't cost them anything. The water management is 90 and 80. Again, they're not 100% for their employees, and you are on their base plan. The school board, is best that I could determine, is they contribute $450 a month for 10 months. So they contribute into a fund for $4,500 per employee. Then they in turn divide that up in how they're going to do it. According to my numbers, their base plan, they contribute 81%, basically 81.3 for employees and 25.6 for dependents. You know, so you are doing an admirable job in today's economy and in today's health care with the plan. Your county staff for the last 3 years has worked untirelessly to come up with a plan so your employee would have a plan that did not cost them anything. And that's happened this year. Now, you have a buy-up plan. That buy-up plan necessitated a 15% rate increase. If you take the last 3 years with the 6%, the -3, and the 15, and you also have tied in with your health program an agreement with your carrier, which is called a ProShare agreement. Doesn't cost you anything, but basically at the end of the year, Larry, Mr. Harvey, you understand this.
I do, yes.
You average up and you got a 90-day run out on any services. Anything paid for that calendar year that is health related, any difference in that number and what you paid in premium, you get 50% back. This past year, you got to check for over $400,000. So you have a very good program. Unfortunately, as you all know and you can read, to look at an entity the size of yours over the last 3 years, if you count the 400 back, you would have had somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.8% rate increase each year. In health insurance in today's world, that's unheard of. When 3% of your costs every year goes to fees and taxes, that's tied in with the Affordable Care Act. So that's what had to happen. There was no additional funds, and staff wanted to make sure that your employees had a plan. We had a plan last year, but it has some limitations on it. Number one, it only allowed for 6 visits to the doctor, so we eliminated that in your 100% plan. And the other thing was, if you went to an in-network provider, such as a hospital to have something done, and if they had an out-of-network provider, then they could balance bill you. That was taken care of legislatively, and as of July 1, that is no longer in effect. So there is no balance billing, which is a benefit. So, that's the status of it. The county has worked very hard. I can tell you right now, that lady sitting back there, she's the toughest lady I had to deal with in a long time. Your current carrier appreciates the business relationships that they have with you. We went to them all the way to the very top, explaining to them the position of our county. When we got the renewal, it was 30.65, and that's what's required. And we told them that's unacceptable. We don't have the money, and we did different things that we did, and we got the one plan down to 15% and the other one at 0 cost, so the employee would have 100%. What's happened, as Mr. Leary alluded to you, is because of the lack of funding on your part, the employer, they've had to adjust your contribution to each plan. And the theory being, in the past, on the 2 plans, you contributed some $200 to $300 more per employee on one plan than you did the other plan. And the thinking was that, is it really fair to contribute $300 more for one employee to their health care costs versus another employee for their health care costs? So what they did this year is they even it out so that you, the employer, is contributing the exact same amount to each plan or to each employee. So there's some equality there. The other thing that we do is we look at the market every year. We know when to bid and when not to. We know what other entities. We waited till the last minute because there was 2 bids out that we wanted to see how the bid turns out. One of them was the St. John Water Management District. And tonight, before your HR staff had to make a decision on whether to go to bid or not, and we were prepared to go, was the outcome of that decision was made public. And because of the pricing and everything else and the concession that we got, if you had gone to bid this year, your rate would have been higher than what we ended up negotiating, because the claims that we're looking at today is 4% higher than they were when we pulled a renewal several months ago. So, it's just an unfortunate situation. You've had a lot of claims, and as you know, with your group, you're rated individually. You're not state rated. There's not DOI, Department of Insurance, mandated rates. You're rated on your individual losses, And so it's all based on your claims that you have in a 12-month period. And your staff monitors that every month. We know where we stand every month. And we monitor it on an ongoing basis. And it's unfortunate, but in the past years, staff had money to appropriate to make up the difference and the cost and increase. And this year, as you heard Mr. Leary say, the funds is not there to do that. That's a summation. I wasn't prepared, but, you know.
No, very appreciative, Mr. Pitts. Very
You know.
appreciative. Commissioners, any questions before we?
I guess I just want to clarify one thing. On the, I forgot what you called it, but the first plan, the county is
Base
paying
plan.
100%
For employees.
for employees.
And any dependent coverage is 75%.
So we pay
You're paying 75%,
75, so the county pays 75%.
and the employee
for the
contributes
family,
25
And the employee contributes
For their dependents.
25%.
for their dependents.
That's right.
Yes.
So, that's pretty good.
Pardon?
Do you want to read that, maybe?
Yeah, I think you've got a handout.
You got a handout on that? Okay. On the prices?
Well, he's gone over it.
Mr.
Unless you
Chairman.
want to do it. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
The concern that I have is one size obviously does not fit all.
No.
And the department heads, the information, they're not the processors or the interpreters of the data. How are we getting to each employee for them to know their specific impact so that the street committee is not the ones that's telling people the sky is falling or that this is going to be overwhelming and now all of a sudden people are in panic? I think that, I know HR has a plan or is implementing a plan to do so, but I don't know whether each department head is going to be in a position. Is there something that is calculated to each employee that's presented to them so that they know, here are my options, here are the charges, here's the cost, and maybe Ms. Allen need to come and help us to understand how that's being done?
Yeah. What happened, I think, to create a bug, is that there's meetings set up, and I don't know how many meetings there are.
Can she come, Ms. Allen?
They'll go to every department. We'll touch every person in the county. We'll even be at some departments at 5 and 6 in the morning to make sure we get everybody before they go to work. And everything will be explained to them, the benefit, the pros and cons of each plan, and answer all of the questions.
It's needed.
Yeah, and we do that every year. And what happened this year, if you want to explain what happened this year, if my memory is correct, and I wasn't involved with it, but one of your departments had got some new hires coming on board, and they were trying to set up what their deduction would be, so they called HR to ask for the insurance cost, and they just got it without understanding the full impact in both plans, and they looked at maybe the plan that they have, which is a rate increase on their part because you're contributing less to that plan than you did last year, trying to equate everything out and to balance everything out. Got to remember, with your a health insurance plan like you have, you're serving roughly 536 folks. Folks, you can't develop a plan as a group to cover 533 folks that's going to make everybody in every particular situation meet everybody's need. That's not how it works. You try to get the best plan you can to cover as many folks as you can and make it affordable for everybody, and then put limitations so nobody is thrown under the bus regardless of what happens. And that basically what you're looking at when you look at about 96, 97% of, or even higher, all claims are in network. So, and you meet the affordable care, which you have a limit on the amount that each insured can pay out of pocket. You know, so that's capped, and it's a situation not like it was many years ago on what you're talking about. And every time that you have a group, yes, there will be 2%, 1%. But folks, you got to look at the 100%, the whole umbrella, and try to develop the best plan you can to meet everybody's needs, including the safe stops that you put in place to protect everybody as best that you can. And your county has always done that. Your HR department has always done that. It's been your HR department goal for the last 5 years that I know of, is to get to a plan where the employees were covered at 100% and no cost to them at all. And this is the first year, if my memory serves me right, that they've been able to accomplish that. Is there give and take? Yes. But folks, the health insurance industry, if you notice, you have an election year. It's a big debate on the presidential. It may all change based on the outcome, or it may go another direction. Mr. Harvey's been in insurance. He knows the unrest in the health insurance. And for us to stand here and say, based on where you are in today's healthcare world, your staff has performed unbelievable. You
Yes,
know,
and that's
they've
not
been-
that's not on trial in my book there. I mean, it's commendable sitting through the meetings and hearing the dialogue back and forth and negotiations and again, telling them, listen, this is Putnam County. We're not substandard or inferior, but we have special needs to accommodate. And so I guess my concern is all 536. I mean, how are we communicating there, and how are the constitutional employees, the employees of the constitutional officers, how is the information being disseminated so that we can zero out misinformation? That's what my concern is, because the misinformation will kill you.
Street committee, you call it.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ann Allen, HR Director. Thank you for asking me to speak on this important topic. First of all, like we do every year, we send out a notice to each and every employee, whether they have benefits or not. If they're benefit eligible, they'll get a notice of what's new. And we are required to have an open enrollment period. This year it will be August 1st through the end of the month. It's a 30-day period. We have some other things that are happening this year, and one is going to be an online enrollment process that will also give employees an added opportunity to really look at the benefits and what levels of benefits they have available to them. But it was our intention to be very upfront and provide very clear and understandings to each employee about the changes and why the changes have been made. We only have a pot of money this big to deal with health insurance. And our goal, as Mr. Bates stated, was to always provide that employee with 100% coverage. The reason that is very important, which we didn't mention, is healthcare reform will be fining employees in the coming year or two if we do not make our employee fully covered. I'm not sure exactly what year. Is that next year?
This year.
Oh, it is this year.
Yeah, it implemented this year. The fine from the IRS, if you do not have health insurance and it's collected by the IRS, it will be the more, not the less, of 2.5% of your income, or $695 per adult, and half of that per child, up to 2 children. So you could be looking at somewhere around $2,100 if you don't have health insurance that you're going to owe to the IRS. And I don't think anybody wants to deal with the IRS. They're trying to collect money. That's not a good situation to be in. So what your staff has done is to ensure that every one of your employees has an option to meet that obligation and not be faced with that fine. And that fine is in place as I'm speaking today for 2016. It's been in place the past 2 years. First year it was 95, I think, and 1%. Don't hold me to these numbers now, I'm going to remember. The second year was for 2015, was I think 2% or $365 per person. It's real now. It's $695 per adult, and then half of that number per child up to 2 children. And that's a penalty that's owed, and trust me, you have to turn in on your taxes. And the number has to be there on whether or not you have insurance and whether or not it is ACA qualified. You can't just have health insurance. It must be a qualified plan that meets the 10 basics, they call them the 10 essential elements of any health plan, and it must meet those. you know, and that's a cost factor that goes into every plan. I'm sorry.
Okay, so our difficult choice this year was to determine what to do. We wanted to make sure we had options for our employees. Initially, when we heard the rate renewal, the higher level plan, we even considered maybe not even offering it because we knew we were paying so much towards dependent care. In some cases, last year was almost 90%. And I don't know any other governmental entity that provides that much coverage for the dependents. It was a great thing that we were doing and supplementing, but at some point, when the money runs out, we have to make hard choices. So as we are here today, we decided rather than closing the buy-up plan, as we refer to, that we would pay the same for either plan, whatever the employee decided to choose. And that's a 75% coverage in the core plan amount. And I know it was a big sting, and it will be to the employees. I'm in the buy-up plan myself, but I have to tell you, we looked to see what the numbers were, how many people were actually going out of network in the buy-up plan. The numbers came back at 6%. So you're looking at 6% of the 286 lives enrolled in that plan that were actually using the out-of-network benefit. The bigger part of the picture was the prescriptions, and we understood that. The lower plan only provides generic prescriptions. I'm in the buy-up plan personally because I have a brand prescription, but when I weigh my contribution cost, how much I would pay for mine, for employee only, that's zero. It's actually worth it for me to pay for that drug out of pocket or use my flexible spending account. And that's one of the things we would like to provide this information to our employees to help them close that gap. For employees with a family, we know that's the biggest, hardest hit there, and we do understand there's people that have special needs or have to have that plan for the brand prescriptions. And we looked at a gap plan that we could offer outside of our regular benefits that helps close that gap. And that is something that we're willing to discuss and offer as well. We have AFLAC products for short-term disability and products like that that help. So this was not an easy decision by any means, but I'll tell you, when I first came to work here and I heard employees were opting out of coverage because they couldn't afford to pay just for their own coverage. And I think you may recall, we had an employee who passed away and he never elected the coverage. Back then, before healthcare reform mandated that we provide coverage, it really was hard to hear that. And we weren't able to add him on the plan when open enrollment rolled around because he was already diagnosed. Healthcare reform has made significant changes. One of them is whether they have a pre-existing condition or not when they come on board, they get to enroll or during open enrollment. Another significant change that was made is what you heard Mr. Bates state. If you go to an in-network hospital, we've heard from many of our employees, if they had to undergo a test or had to have anesthesia, if that provider was not in the network, you had to pay more. Well, that's been changed also with healthcare reform. So healthcare reform is not all bad. There has been some good changes that are benefits to us. So that was part of our decision making. But what we heard about the core plan, that really people had a heartburn where it was over the 6 doctor visit limit before you had to pay the 20%. Well, we had that removed. So there's no longer going to be a doctor limit. So we feel we've done everything we could. We don't know what else we could do except beg the commission to provide more of coverage than 75% or pay at the core plan. But I know budgeting, they're going to tell us, we're budgeting way more than any other governmental entity. We just checked with some other ones, and Mr. Bates can probably tell you a little better, but even Alachua County doesn't provide 100% for their employees yet. And their dependence is like 60%. It's lower. So that's the reality of where we are, and I wish we had better news, but...
Well, thank you, Ms. Allen. I
You're
think what
welcome.
we're looking for as a commission here is that same level of explanation to our employees.
Oh, yes, sir.
Make sure that's delivered. This is not easy, as you say, and there are so many changes. The landscape doesn't look any near the same as it did 3 or 4 years ago. And that, we need to get that down all the way to the bottom of our employees.
Yeah,
Everybody needs to understand.
We definitely will make that, it's our mission. We have, to answer a question that was posed earlier, I think Marjorie has 12 different mini sessions set up, and we are moving to an online enrollment program where they can go on 24/7 and have access to all the information as well as their dependents. And we're going to hold sessions, Steve and train how to do that if it's desired, or they can meet face-to-face. But we have at least 12 sessions already, and we always take walk-ins and meet face-to-face. The dependents are welcome to attend these sessions like every year.
That would go a long way, I think.
Yeah, and we
could
definitely
really-
will be doing the same thing we always have.
Okay.
Yeah, my concern is always the individuals who may least understand all of this, that they're getting the time, the attention, the affection, and everything that is appropriate. The individuals who have options with other benefits through spouses and things of that nature and all, but those individuals who really need us to nurture them through this process, that's where my main concern is.
All right, let's move
Will do.
on.
If I may
Mr.
say
Bates?
one-
Yes,
one
sir.
last time to answer your question, Mr. Flagg. We're prepared to meet with anybody, one-on-one. My staff is local. We do that. If you hear of anybody, send them to our office. If they, not comfortable going to your HR person, we meet with them individually. We take their individual prescriptions, make a comparison. We can do that and let them know exactly the difference in which would be in their best interest. And we try to do that because we want to be proactive. So if you hear of anybody or any noise, send them our way. And we've got staff there every day, that's their job, is to provide the services that you need and answer all the questions that our employees have.
Mr. Chairman, I think if our HR director will make sure every department head have, like you say, that information of who to contact because maybe they don't want to come to HR. So if all of that is transmitted, I will have a higher level of comfort.
That's a very good offer. Mr. Bates, thank you for.
Thank you all.
I know it's-
Any further
Yes,
questions, I'd be happy to
Commissioner Pellicer.
I don't have any questions. I'm just going to get on my soapbox for a little bit. So, a lot of good things been said here today. I want to clear up, and I want to jump on this issue real quick. The Better Place Plan money, for those of you that don't remember, has very descriptive rules of what that money can do and cannot do. And the building of a administration building and the Parks and Rec Department combination building, that's totally different than from the general fund. Just absolutely separate money. It does not intermingle there at all. And that there are rules of when we devised that plan or put that into play, stated that, and that's been very strictly adhered to. As Mr. Bates said, building a jail on our own, I think we saved a ton of money by being mandated by a federal court judge and telling us you're going to build this, this, and this, and you're going to build at these standards, and we would have had a much larger ticket. The East Palatka water system over there, wastewater and sewer, which I look to hopefully steadily expand and grow, that has to be in place. You're not going to have growth if you don't have that. It's mandatory. For those of you who don't know, we have a Logic meeting coming up where we have some very key people coming that are going to talk to us about growth in that area over there possibly. Home builders, real estate attorney, very prominent attorney coming to talk to us and hopefully send some people our way that can do us some good. As Commissioner Flagg said earlier, I think with the court of public opinion is no place to have a trial. The facts are the facts, and they are what they are. I hate insurance premium increases as much as anybody, but I do realize that we've got law enforcement officers that if they, through their misunderstanding, and I think it's going to be a misunderstanding, over 40 officers out there were going to be bringing home less than $1,000 a month, and that's just not acceptable. That's absolutely not acceptable. And on top of that, possibly on food stamps. And we ought to all hang our head in shame with that kind of thought process. We talk about our county. We're so unique, and a lot of people don't realize that. There are 6 contiguous counties to Putnam. We're the 4th largest. 4th largest. Think about that. And we have the next to the smallest population. So when you put all those factors in there, it all adds up. We're doing a ton with a very little bit of money. And I've said it before, and I'm very optimistic. I do think better things are on the horizon. I feel like, we're always going to be the last one out there for a little while till we get our 4-lane connectors, east, west, north, south, completed. That's always going to be a stumbling block for us. But there are some good things on the horizon. I just feel like you can't keep going around Putnam County and leaving us out forever and ever. It just can't happen. I've never seen it anywhere else. I don't know why we'd be that phenomenon that it only happens here. But again, I want to reinforce what Commissioner Flagg said again. Getting the word out to these people as to exactly what this insurance plan is and how it, is different, and how it covers just employees or just dependents or whatever your case may be, because everyone is unique. As Ms. Allen said, they try to cover the vast majority with what covers the most and does the best for the least amount of money. But you're not going to have a picture-perfect plan for each and every person. It just doesn't work that way. I wish it did. I'm not quitting. I'm going to keep my nose to the grindstone. I'm going to keep charging and doing what I think is right for our county. And I feel like we really need to be sure that everybody's got the right information out there about the new plans and what the costs are related to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Pelzer.
Who has his hand up? I don't know.
Who's that?
Ho.
Yes. Do you have something, Mr. Hotel? You have to come to the podium if you're going to speak.
You have to come to the podium. You have to come to the
Come to the podium.
Yeah.
If it's that important, come forward.
I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
You bet. Tim Hotelling from San Mateo. Y'all are talking back and forth, and I was just curious what the definition of Miss Allen had, the big sting in layman's term. I mean, approximately what are the employees looking for in terms of increases in cost of this health insurance? I got the impression that it's a big deal to them, so I wanted a ballpark figure.
I'm not sure of your question. Repeat it, sir.
Miss Allen said that the increase in health costs, health benefit costs to the average employee is a big sting. I wanted an approximate ballpark figure as to what a big sting is.
You just heard everything we heard, and for the first time in recent history, we have a plan of no cost to an employee. That explanation is what we just explained needs to be gone out into the county to every employee and totally explained, because the landscape has changed. With the Affordable Care Act and everything that was just mentioned, it's different. It looks different than years ago. So,
Mr. Chairman, I mean, that's not a uniform number. It's individualized. So I think if Mr. Ho wants to know what it might be, he can talk to Ms. Allen. And I mean, you got the core plan, and you got several categories within the core plan. You got the buyout plan, and you got several categories within the buyout plan. So it's going to vary from employee to employee, and there's no one uniform number that's going to be applicable.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Leary. Thank you, Mr. Poe. We can't give you that. I think you need to go to personnel. All right, commissioners. We need a,
Ms. Bridget.
Ms. Bridges, come on.
Bridges would like to speak.
We need to open it to the public, right?
How are you today?
How are you this morning?
Good.
My name
Afternoon, 7 minutes
It
left.
is afternoon. Brenda Bridges, Putnam County Tax Collector's Office.
I came here today on a fact-finding mission because, as Commissioner Flagg said, there was a lot of talk on the street. We are in the middle of our budget process now and had not heard any conversation about any increase in the insurance rate to our employees, so it is a major concern for us. I did request yesterday to get a copy of those rates, so today I would also request to see a copy of what is out there. And then, being a staff member myself, I know the protocol and the meetings that they have when they discuss the plans during open enrollment. But we're talking a 30-day period that doesn't give staff the time to do their research, and if they can't afford these plans, to be able to look otherwise so that they can provide for their family. I understand budgets. I think all of us do. And I think even in our individual lives we do. But we also have to understand that the majority of the staff are married with children. And from what I'm hearing, and I hope those numbers are incorrect, that is the big sting. And so we would like to have information now. And I think when we do have a big impact, and we understand that we have to make tough decisions as leaders, but maybe 30 days before their plan changes is not adequate enough time for them to do the research they need to do. So just a comment out of concern for our employees.
And here there's numbers you would like. And I think, Ms. Allen, what Mrs. Bridges brings to the table is very important. It is the family, the dependents that are the big concern of our employees. So in your travels and explaining these new procedures and policies, we should do what's best for those dependents. It should maybe go out of the scope of what we're considering here from Mr. Bates's firm.
Yes, Friday was the date that the memorandum and the rates were going out to our employees. We're still making the last minute changes to the memorandum because of the dates where they can go and have their open enrollment. But it goes out this Friday, and it will have an explanation of why, the who, what, where, when, and why, as well as the dates of all the meetings. We do this every year, and again, we weren't anticipating the information to be sent out the way it was. It was an oversight from our part, but also during the budget process, we were told for all the constitutionals how much to budget for each employee as well. To answer your more specific, what families can do, there are many options. It was brought up about some of the employees being on food stamps. So we've had employees in Public Works in that situation for many years, and we work with them very closely and individually. There's other options, and that's where Mr. Hewitt's expertise helps us. When we have our benefits fair, we have Florida Healthy Kids available because many of our employees have that as an option.
His staff is very familiar with
We're
that.
very
Affordable
familiar.
Care Act.
We are very familiar with this. We do our best to help employees. We have the FSA program where they can put their own money aside pre-tax to help pay for some of their deductibles and so forth. But we certainly are not trying to do anything without giving the employees proper notice. We just finalized these numbers, just very recently. We didn't even have totals for 3 weeks ago. So we just got all that put together, and we are sending out the memorandum with all the specifics on Friday and all the dates. But we'll even meet with them before the open enrollment period. So to address those one-on-ones, it can start at any time after we release the memorandum and the information, and we'll be happy to do anything we can to help. Remember, this doesn't take effect till October 1st. So we're here today, July.
But she's right. We have really 30 days to get this done before the
That's
street
correct.
committee takes over that Mr. Flagg talks about.
Right.
Yeah,
We
and
don't want that.
my other concern is that each of the department heads or the constitutional officers, that's who staff normally would go to. And I think they need to be doubly prepared and doubly equipped. And I'm hoping that you will get all of them in one room so all of them can hear the exact presentation, or whether you PowerPoint it or however you do it, because when those employees go to them, attitude is everything. And if the leaders of the departments have an information deficit, or the constitutional officers have an information deficit, that's not going to make your job easier, and it certainly won't make ours easier. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey.
Mr. Chairman, I just heard something that was kind of disturbing, 30 days before the street committee takes over. Really what we need to know today is what is the dates of the open enrollment? Give me the date that Mr. Bates and his crew is going to go out there, not Mr. Hewitt, by the way. I caught that. What date is he going to be out there hitting the street, and what date do we have to have all these employees, the 536, finalized? That's the date we need to know.
Okay, our memorandum goes out this Friday in July.
Okay.
And it will illustrate each of those open to everyone meetings during the month of August.
So we're only going to do the month of August.
We
not-
do the month of August in scheduled meetings, like group meetings, but any time during August, appointments can be made any day. We schedule them in the morning for different groups, 6 a.m. Public Works will be at the regularly scheduled safety meeting. That's always the second Thursday of every month. So we already have all the meeting dates set aside and scheduled. I don't have the schedule in front of me.
But are those our dates, or are those Blue Cross and Blue Shield's dates? I mean, could we extend it another 30 days if Ms. Bridges has an employee that goes, I just need to make sure I'm doing the right thing here? And-
Because we have pre-tax premiums, we're bound by the Section 125 of the IRS code to hold a 30-day open enrollment. We have to hold it a month before it takes effect. The date of the new coverage starts October 1st. Payroll deduction starts the month before, so when they're paying, so that's why open enrollment's in August.
And I think most of the employees, if not all, open enrollment is not new. What the issue is rate change. And I think
Correct.
that, people just need to know the impact as soon as possible. And I think
That's
you've
correct.
said enough about how you're doing it there. I'm glad to hear that. But I just want those individuals in a group setting to know that they don't have to ask their personal and confidential question in front of everybody. That
Oh,
they can,
certainly
that they
not,
can,
no. We always do the one-on-ones.
Right.
Another thing that's important, probably about 300 of the employees have single coverage. So we're not talking about all 500. That 500 total is the dependents in that count.
That's encouraging.
It's a very, very big change and difference when you talk about it in that. And Commissioner Flagg, to answer your question regarding department heads, the meeting of our department heads is tomorrow. It always follows our commission day, and that is the day that we are going to provide the materials and the training to the directors and provide that information to them. But all along, we've been telling them, as well as the employees in the memoranda, this is the last year we're going to be able to subsidize at this rate. We've been very diligent with that because it's the truth. We knew it was going to end at some point. Well, this is that point.
Right, and it's just the fear of the unknown, and
Yes.
like I say, each individual case is going to be uniquely different. And I'm going to use the word again, Mr. Chairman, just don't want the street committee calling the shots. We want the facts from HR.
Right. We're called human racehorses. I say, come to the horse's mouth. So,
Be sure.
little HR joke.
emphasize the fact that major changes next year.
Well, and remember, when you have a couple hundred employees in single coverage, they're going to be happy because this is the first year in over 20 years that what they were paying is now going away. It was only $22, but to them, that's going to be a monthly increase for them.
Absolutely.
I didn't
So-
realize there was 300 of them.
Well, there's about that figure that changes. Marjorie has the exact figures for me. But it's not in just the one plan. They are going to have to switch to the plan to have it fully covered, the other plan, the core plan.
Go ahead, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Allen, last week, most of us were down at convention, and one of the booths there was prescription drugs. Can you kind of explain if that's a big area of concern for our employees? Is there something we can do to help our employees? I know Mr. Bates said if you bring your prescription in, they'll compare and look at the plans, but we're talking about the core plan, which was going to be less, than the better plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something we can do with that prescription plan booth, basically?
Well, the
that-
two major differences of the two plans, core plan, generic drugs only, and in and out of network. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. The core plan is just generic drugs and just in-network providers. The buy-up plan has a list of brand drugs that are covered, not all brands, but a list of them and generics, as well as in and out of network benefits. That's a significant change. But when we looked at the utilization, only 6% of the people enrolled in that buy-up plan were actually using those extra benefits. So, I mean, it was like a safety blanket to people. They wanted to stay there in the what-if scenario. To address the specifics regarding prescription plans, we did look at carving out the prescription plan and coming up with just a prescription packet, and that's where Bates and Hewitt's office could probably, if Mr. Bates could expand, but I believe there are outside plans. But we have a by mail system that you can get your drugs by mail, and you pay, you get 3 months for a discounted rate, or even Walmart will give you 3 months now for the cost of 2 months. So there are a lot of things that we know that we can help with. And before we even implemented a plan with generic only medications, I went to 3 or 4, I think 3 doctors that specifically, and said, because I'm on a brand, and I said, is there something you could do to help? And they said there are some very rare cases like chemotherapy or for some special needs children that there's only brand medications out there. It's true, but it's not going to be the vast majority of our group. So perhaps the people that have those types of needs could get a supplemental prescription plan. And we'd like to help in any way we can to help make that happen. And that's why our partnership is so important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Flagg.
Mr. Chairman, I also brought back information through the National Association of Counties on that plan, and they were pretty much saying that if our county was enrolled, that it's not going to cost us anything, but it would make all of our citizens eligible, and I have that information.
We're already enrolled in that, sir.
You did that,
Yes,
that's
and the
right.
cards are at the front of Human Resources.
So is our staff taking advantage of that? Are citizens taking advantage of that, or how are we promoting it?
Well, we do give out the information, but it usually doesn't close the gap as much as you'd hope. If you don't have any insurance, it helps. But a lot of the pharmacies, their generic drugs are much cheaper anyway than using that card. But we do have it, and we do pass them out.
Does the health department also, do they have it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we've been enrolled in that program when it started.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more. Ms. Allen, is there a way that we can be preemptive here with our employees? And as Mr. Bates said, you bring your prescription here and we'll check it out. But is there a way, like maybe you came to mind when you were talking to me about, should we tell our employees now maybe to go to their doctor, see if they can find a generic medicine that would apply to what they're taking, because that might really dictate what health plan they go on. And I mean, I think it's more doctor related than us related.
Certainly.
Because I'm going to tell my wife to do the same thing.
One of the issues we have to be very mindful is HIPAA compliance.
Right.
And that's another reason we like to have the one-on-one sessions or the partnerships. But we always recommend that the person enrolled or the patient seek guidance from their doctor. But there are so many generic drugs out there, and like Crestor, for example, is not even on the preferred brand list, and you think that would be because of all the marketing and you hear about it all the time, but even in the buy-up plan, it's not a covered prescription. So my best advice is, yes, open that dialogue with your doctor, see if there's a generic or alternative. And when people are undergoing chemotherapy, a lot of times those drugs aren't covered, but there's organizations that step in and assist, like the Cancer Foundation.
Didn't I read in here, there's also a $200 cap monthly on those preferred brands, or the?
That's a one-time only.
Okay.
Correct.
Medical pharmacy in the office, she stated.
If I may
Mr. Bates.
interject one thing. Folks, what we have to be careful about, We can't go to an employee and ask them questions, and they have to come to us. HIPAA doesn't allow that. We can't discuss, like if Larry's taking a name brand, and the report we don't see report on individuals, but you know, if he'll come to us, we can't ask him, Larry, what medications are you taking? You know, he's got to come, and then we have to get a waiver signed where where we have his approval to get his information. For example, if Larry comes to my office and he has a problem with his billing, say, or it's one of his coverage, before the carrier will even talk to us, we have to get a release. Even though we're the agent, we have to get a release from the individual, send that to the carrier, authorizing them to release the information to us. So it's a very complicated process that you go into on an individual basis, if that makes sense. And we try to do the best, and like I told you earlier, if anybody has any questions, if they'll come to the office, we've got staff that can sit down with them and go over everything and be happy to do that. And we try to do that on an ongoing basis, but sometimes it's difficult to do that, or, you know, what we're talking about. But we are very limited on what we can say, and it has to be generic, cannot be individually, and they have to come forth and sign off on it in order to do that. So I wanted to put that to rest. HIPAA is real. It's a very complicated situation that we're in, and its privacy is utmost, and you have to sign forms and do everything on what you're talking about. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Okay, Ms. Allen?
I think Charles.
We're done. Mr. Overturf, sure.
It is afternoon. I just want to echo, though, a little bit about what Brenda said. I think part of the problem was because none of us have that information except, I guess, just one constitutional officer in our county. And I think that's where the problem got started, is because those employees were communicating with the rest of us. And when I got approached at 10 minutes of 5 yesterday and said, have you been aware of this huge increase that we're having? And I looked at him and I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. So there's been some part of it, you know, and I know she said they're sending them out Friday. My suggestion to you would be, from now on, we don't do it for anybody, or we do it for everybody, so that there is not, as you said, the street talk or whatever. But when you sit there and you look at the numbers, and an employee and their family coverage goes from $300 this year to $900 a month, I can't answer those questions. And I'm not saying they're not misinformed, but it sure was on the form, and this is coming from one of your constitutional officers' departments, that the rest of us had no idea what they were even talking about. So as Brenda said from her office there, and as others, I have a feeling we need that communication so that all of us are on the same page, so it doesn't look bad for you all that we favored somebody, but we didn't, you know, let the other employees know, and they're hearing it from their spouses or their ex-spouses or their kids or whatever. So it's just a comment to think about, you know, that we want to try to get the right information. As Mr. Bates has said, they'll be glad to sit down with everybody and go through stuff. It's just that when you get blindsided, don't know what they're talking about, and they look at you like, are you lying to us? You know, that's just not the way we need to be operating in Putnam County.
Reasonable request. Thank you, Mr. Overturf. Okay, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I have one last comment, if you don't mind.
For the public.
What's that?
Even though we had public comments, we didn't officially open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not a hearing, is it?
Well, this isn't a public hearing. This is not even actually an action item. The next item was an action item.
I'm getting to the action item right after Mr. Harvey's comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I do know what Better Place monies are for. I know what they're dedicated for. I served as chairman for 2 years. It's just part of our budget that we're going to be passing today, and I was just making examples of situations. That's all I was doing. So I'm sorry for the misspoke, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to our recommended action. I need by motion to accept the tentative budget and set the proposed millage rate. And then by motion, we're going to set the time, date, and place that will occur. It's on the last page of your packet. You take the first number 1 at the end of the page and offer that, please.
Mr. Chairman,
If you agree. If you don't, say so.
by motion, accept the tentative budget as set the proposed millage rates as read.
Mr. Chairman, would you enumerate the two millage rates, the one for the general fund and the one for the MSTU, please?
Okay, we're going to, on the millage rate, we're going to go to the rollback rate, which is set at 9.0914. Okay, on our MSTU, 1.1000. Is that good, Mr. Leary?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, sir. Mr. Pellicer, that concludes your motion?
Yes, I believe it does, if that's worded
All right, sir.
adequately enough.
I know we got spread out there a long way. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we have
I'm
part
opposed.
2. Oh, we have a nay. All right. Picked it up, Tony? Part 2?
Mr. Chairman, I so move that we set the Monday, September the 12th, 2016 at 5:05 PM in this boardroom for the tentative budget, Tuesday, September 27th, 2016, 5:05 for the final budget hearing and adoption of that final budget.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any further discussion?
What was that date again, sir?
It's right on the bottom of 114.
Okay.
September 12th.
Okay, thank you.
September 27th.
First,
Yeah, that's what,
it's the second meeting in September, is that right?
Monday night.
The final one is the second.
12th and 27th, yes.
Everybody clear?
Here.
Okay. Motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
The ayes have it. You're okay on that one, Mr. Harvey?
I am, sir.
All right, sir. Agenda, County Attorney, Mr. Stacy Manning.
I have nothing.
Thank you, sir. The clerk went earlier, and Commissioner comments. Thank you again, Mr. Bates. Commissioner comments? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Second. We're done. Thank you.
Really?